Hey, what's up? It's Cute What If? This side. Today we will be seeing what if Deku was Nedzu's secret child? Before we move ahead with the FIC, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for future what ifs like this. Izuku has a past that some would call unsavory. Abandoned at the age of 4 due to quirklessness, taken in by a villain gang and only kept alive for his analysis skills, he was definitely in a bad position. At the age of 5, he became an assassin due to his analysis abilities and the fact that no one would look at some kid and think that they were a murderer. Over the past 3 years, he's killed 36 various pro heroes, one each month. He really didn't like doing it, pleading that they would turn and find him, but they never did. He shakes the thoughts out of his mind as he focuses on his mark, a promising upcoming hero. A student at U.High who had gotten first place in the sports festival when they participated. Maybe if he was in a different life, he would have been dreaming of going to the hero school. But as it stands, he is an assassin for a group of people who would never allow him such dreams. He wasn't allowed to dream of being saved, he wasn't allowed to dream of being a hero, he wasn't allowed to dream. He moves his gun to kill when something wraps around him. He turns to see the infamous Eraserhead. He nods, eyebrows raising. "Are you here to save me?" he asks, the thoughts that had just been going through his head coming out accidentally. Save you? Oh shit, he needs to make it seem like he's not desperate. He figures out a way to make it work. "I'm a child. I'm also forced to kill people by a group of villains." That sounds like someone a hero would save. Izuku deadpants. "You don't want to be taken away?" The hero seems confused, as if he expected Izuku to want to live with villains. "I mean, it's preferable. I doubt I'll be abused if I go with a hero, though there are some heroes that I think would prove that wrong. Like Endeavor, whatever happened to make sweet Todoroki Ray pour boiling water on their son? I think it was a mental breakdown from abuse, personally. Their eldest son also disappeared, and I think he may be a villain I've seen a few times that has a lot of burn scars." The boy shrugs. "This is all speculation, of course. I could never get actual proof. But if, say, a hero that can help take him down talks to Mrs. Todoroki, I'm sure guilt or fear for her children will help put him behind bars. Though, it would be best to wait until the eldest child that still there is old enough to take custody." Izuku tilts his head with a small smirk and Eraserhead blinks at the analysis skills of an 8-year-old. "I think I know someone who would like to meet you," the man tells him. That's how Izuku gets introduced to Nedzu. The animal looks at the child in front of him with curiosity. Aizawa just said, "This kid is good at analysis but got picked up by villains," before leaving the boy. "So, what is your name?" Nedzu asks, brewing a cup of tea for the child in his office after school hours. "I'm Izuku, don't really know my family name. I was tossed out of my house at the age of 4 and then caught by villains on the street at age 5 to probably do drag runs, but then I analyzed them and they found me useful to not kill me." You're Nedzu, an animal with a quirk that puts you at an intelligence that goes beyond man. You run U.High, which is where we are at now. You are known to be sadistic to people, possibly due to your past of being abused by humans as experimentations. You never give up on a student and do the best you can to give them the tools they will need to become great heroes. You also know how to make a mean cup of tea. The child looks at him as if he's looking for more information to be added. "Do you have an analysis quirk?" The creature asks after a moment. "I'm quirkless. I just know a lot about heroes and analyze to the best of my abilities. Like, Eraserhead said that he wanted to introduce us after I told him I wanted to be saved and explain my reasoning behind why, along with a hint that he should look into a certain hero's family life because I seriously think Endeavor is abusive." Izuku shakes his head before continuing. "That leads to a few conclusions, including that he thinks you'll legally take me on as a student, or both." The animal places a cup of tea in front of the boy. You are very intelligent." Nedzu is pleased. He was at first startled, then mad at villains for turning a boy who's not even old enough to be in middle school into an assassin. But he can see why. He doesn't condone it at all, heavens no. But he understands why. And the boy is right. "I will legally adopt you and take you in as a student." The creature says after a moment. He already has papers to adopt students who may be suffering at home, but fills them out for the young boy in front of him. At least being the principal who taught many pro-heroes, and being a pro-hero himself, though people tend to ignore that fact, gives one connections. He should put the boy into counseling, and also convert one of the rooms of the penthouse into something a child would enjoy. And so, Izuku becomes Nedzu's son and student. The boy learns all he can to sharpen his analysis and even uses it on the students. The teachers all get used to seeing curly green hair walking around the school campus, watching students with a fascination. That is, when he's not completing his own schooling online. At first, some students are concerned. Why is there an elementary school student in their school, wearing oversized hoodies and shorts? Teachers simply responds, "That's Nedzu's son." Eventually, some students ask him questions and are shocked at how he reacts. He tells heroic students how to improve their quirks and where their weaknesses are. He tells the support students why their blueprints have errors and watches as they fix it. He shows management students better ways to advertise utilizing psychology and tells them which advertisements appeal to him more. He helps the general education students with the more difficult assignments and what career paths they should go down. Izuku is seen as a person that everyone can ask questions and get an actual answer from that he will calmly explain until it's understood. Izuku turns into a cryptid of sorts for the school. The fact that he only has one name and the alias that students come up with make it even more so. Students will dedicate social media pages to logging various experiences with the person known as Nedzu's human child. There are no pictures for privacy reasons, but posts including, "NHC can and will scale the building to hiss at students like a goblin. The kid of you, jumped into my class from event to point out a mistake the teacher made before walking out. Nedzu's human child showed me how to build a laser today. And, I think Nedzu's kid hasn't slept for the past 36 hours but for some reason a 9-year-old can drink an entire pot of coffee so people outside of you are confused by what they see as a school-wide joke." But, there have been glimpses of a head of green curly hair that stay around the school that make some people speculate that the stories are true. Several years after he has been taken in, his dad calls a staff meeting early in the morning. Izuku being Nedzu's son and a helper in most classes is of course included. It may have taken a while for the boy to refer to the creature as dad, but after a counseling session with Hound Dog went a little awry, Izuku asked for his dad. Since then it just stuck. When he gets to the meeting room, he blinks at the gaunt-looking man that's sitting near his dad. Izuku shrugs before walking over to his usual seat, next to the rat beastie himself. Izuku, when all of this is done I'll be needing your help to analyze the situation," Nedzu says as the boy settles himself in the seat. "Okay Dad, does it have to do with the Twiggy giant or not?" Izuku asks, pulling a notebook out of his sweatshirt pocket, knowing that something important is going to be said in the meeting. The gaunt man sputters and coughs, blood coming out. Izuku frowns, "That's not healthy. Missing part of your respiratory system." The man blinks at him before nodding slightly, yes. Along with my stomach." Izuku writes that down, referring to the man as Twiggy Giant in his notes. "So I'm guessing limited food intake to things that are easily digestible by the gut since there's no stomach acid, applesauce, or some smoothies. Probably the best bet is to keep supplies stocked in Recovery Girl's office that include IV bags that have nutrients you can't get from the food limitations." Izu starts to mutter and Nedzu nods. "Good idea on the supplies, I'll get that set up." Nedzu pats Izuku's head and the boy grins wide. He settles down as teachers start to file in, starting with Cementos. The large man gives Izuku a gentle smile and a stack of small notebooks. "I saw these on sale and I figured I'd help you stock up," he says, and Izuku beams at the man. "Thank you so much." He takes them and shoves as many of the wrapped books into his pocket as he can, putting a few extras in his cargo shorts. He uses them constantly, usually giving each hero student their own so that he can observe and give analysis and suggestions for the students in their first year, and makes sure that they don't hurt themselves when they practice said suggestions. Hound Dog comes in a moment later, nodding at the others and sitting close to Izuku. The boy theorizes that it's something to do with the fact that Izuku lives on campus and Inui's quirk, but the teacher acts like a guard dog with Izuku. It's adorable to Izuku at least. The man stayed near Recovery Girl's office after he broke his arm once, and refused to leave until Izuku was up and out. He imagines it's what having an older brother is like. The troublesome trio walks in. Aizawa, the teacher that expels more students than all other teachers combined. Yamada, the loudest teacher, very eccentric, but also very kind. Kiyama, the teacher that will give SEC advice, but will also put on an act that is overly SXL. Aizawa is holding his sleeping bag, Yamada is putting gel in his hair, and Kiyama is holding 2 trays of drinks, handing them out. Izuku gets a hot chocolate along with a cake pop, the boy grinning wide as he takes the sweet treats. He loves sweet things. The trio sits down close together, and Izuku feels a familiar pang of loneliness that he does his best to ignore. He's fine, he doesn't need friends. Various other teachers file in over the next 5 minutes, all taking seats around the table. Lunch rush comes in last, handing Izuku a plate of French toast and sausages syrup in a cup on the side that he immediately pours over everything. "Thank you," Izuku says with a bright grin and begins to eat, keeping his notebook to the side so it won't get syrup on it. Next to him, Nedzu nods and stands up. "All right, since everyone is here, we have a few things to cover. Number 1 is a new staff member with a very big secret." Izuku looks to Twiggy Giant and wonders that the hair looks like an almost deflated form of All Might's. The height would probably match since Twiggy is slouching. The eyes are an intense blue that reminds Izuku of yellow. "Dad, is the Twiggy Giant All Might?" Izuku asks, popping some of the French toast in his mouth. Watching as the gaunt man coughs up more blood, several staff looks at Izuku, and the principal just cackles. Dash plus dash plus dash plus dash plus dash plus dash plus. Considering that Izuku gave away the biggest topic of the early meeting, it lasted a little over half an hour. Most staff returned to their duties, some prepping the areas for the recommendation or support exams later in the day, some working on the new security that Izuku suggested. Just because we have the best doesn't mean we can't make it better, and some were just sitting around. Izuku plucked up his dad and placed the creature on his shoulder. "Yagi, please come with us." Nedzu calls out as Izuku starts to go to his dad's office. The teenager has a phone out, playing a game as he walks through familiar halls. He doesn't even need to look up as he enters his dad's office, sitting down in one of the 2 chairs behind the principal's desk. His dad jumps to the ground and starts making tea, while Izuku pulls his feet up and leans on his knees, switching apps on his phone to read some news. His chair is just something that his dad decided to get him one day when he was there were dozens of excuses used for why when teachers asked. Izuku needs to see all the security cameras and Nedzu's computer is best for that. Izuku is constantly in the office, and students are on the couches, so where else should the child go? Nedzu wants to be as effective as possible when showing data to teach his son, and that just happens to be looking at it from the same angle so that they aren't constantly flipping around papers. But the real reason, something Izuku was able to figure out after a day, is that Izuku will most likely take over for Nedzu. It's a way to make him feel comfortable with the position decades before, so when the transition comes, it won't be rough. Izuku is brought back to the present when his tea is placed in front of him, and his dad pats him on the shin before moving to his chair. Izuku looks up and puts his phone away, looking up at All Might. "Now, I know that you don't want many people knowing about the full nature of your quirk, however having Izuku know about it will be most beneficial, since he has a knack for finding solutions." Nedzu starts, taking a sip of his tea at the same time as Izuku. Yagi will refuse it, but all know that with that one motion, the man felt true, unadulterated fear. "If you think it is for the best, I trust you," Yagi says after a moment of the father-son duo staring at him, the same look in their eyes as they hold their teacups the exact same way and give off the same aura of, "I could probably tell you everything about your great-grandmother who was adopted in Poland and ended up being a war hero due to her spy missions before she was killed in what would eventually become a cold case, including why the police didn't catch on to the obvious signs of it. Being her past lover with whom she had a secret affair before she ended it to properly raise her children." Yagi would tell everyone that it was because he trusted Nedzu. But the way that Izuku looks at him, green eyes sharp and calculating while his small body is relaxed and almost lazy, it terrified him. That's how Izuku found out the truth about One for All, and was asked about what he thought would be good qualities for a successor. The boy sips his tea, mulling it over. The fact that Yagi has to change into All Might to use the power the quirk gives him is concerning to the teenager. And the next person to hold it will have to contain all that energy. There's an idea that Yagi didn't talk about that Izuku thinks over. The fact that OFA is half stockpiling suggests that quirks move along, and there might be a quirk that changes forms to properly hold the power. Like an augmentation quirk or something. And it would probably take a while to properly use that power, so the next holder would be better off with a self-healing quirk, Izuku says loud and clearly, compared to the muttering he had started to help his thought process. Why do you say that, Izuku? Nedzu asks, knowing that Yagi might need the help understanding why. The power that Yagi shows when he's All Might requires him to change forms. That alone suggests that it's almost too much. If you take all the power that he's gathered and move it into a new person, who hasn't trained for 40+ years, it will probably break them. Training the body to hold it would be the best first step, but then we would have to help train them to actually use it. At Yagi's confused expression, Izuku sighs and comes up with a new way to explain it. Think about it like this. A person who has a strength quirk will typically have physical differences, even if it's small and unseen to the naked eye in the muscles, to hold and use that power. Those that don't are labeled as self-destructive and advised to not go into hero work. OFA at a surface level is a strength quirk. A very powerful one. It will break whoever uses it next, and the ability to repair oneself while training the body to use it will save Gran-er Recovery Girl's time and limit her rage at a student and you, Yagi. The gaunt man nods. I see. Is there anyone here with a quirk that would work? Nedzu shakes his head. Not yet. There is an applicant to the exams that has a quirk that might work, but we will just have to see how they do. On the day of the exams for general and hero courses, Izuku is called to his dad's office. He walks in and can smell tea being brewed. Hello, Izuku. I have a question for you. Nedzu says as he grabs 2 teacups. What's up, Dad? The greenette asks as he sits down on the couch. Today he's wearing a large green hoodie with black shorts and his regular red high tops. I was thinking you should become a teacher for the upcoming school year. His adoptive father says as tea is poured. Izuku blinks at that. He has the qualifications, sure. Being the son of the smartest pro-hero, even if not biological, leads to things like online college classes. He has a master's in secondary education, per his dad's request, along with PhDs in quirk science and quirk development. He should have realized that once he got the master's his father would ask him to teach. Hell, he's even technically a hero, licensed and all. Nedzu sets the tea down, adding in the 2 cubes of sugar he knows his son will ask for as the boy says, Okay, what class will I be teaching? Class 1A. Today is the entrance exam. I want you to observe and select students for your class. The recommendation students have already been assigned, but I interviewed the ones that will be joining you. Don't worry about Yagi's potential successor, I'll be watching them. Izuku nods and drinks some of the tea. The family of 2 enjoys the tea before heading out to the testing facility. Izuku walks behind his father as they move into an observation room. The students are finishing the written exam, so the teachers are just relaxing and waiting for the real fun to start. Aizawa notices the father-son duo walking in and walks over. He really is glad that he introduced the 2. His boss is happier in a way, and Izuku is very bright and can actually use that for good under the protection and guidance of pro-heroes. He'll be the first to admit that a child isn't what he expected to find when searching for the assassin that had killed dozens of pro-heroes. But he's glad that the child is now in a situation where he has happiness. Why is Problem Child here? He asks as he ruffles green curls. He is going to be teaching class 1A this year. Nedzu says. A few of the other teachers look over in surprise, but they keep silent. Aizawa chuckles. They will wish they were put into my class. Hisashi starts the exam and Izuku watches the various monitors. He wants to try something. Hey, Dad? Yes. If I see someone who has a quirk not suited to this but I feel could be suited to heroics, can I take them into my class? The Chimera looks at him for a moment before nodding. Yes, I feel like that will do. I trust your mind, Izuku. Don't let me down. Izuku nods. I won't. He turns back to the exams and watches, taking notes of those who have destructive quirks that interest him while looking at the list of quirks he could use for his chosen student. He filters the search down until he finds one he thinks will work out quite well, now just to see if the person has what it takes. He quickly explains his plan to his dad, who approves, and leaves the room to head for the testing center that his choice is in. He watches as the students file out and makes sure his Yudata badge is visible as he sees his choice, who is looking at the ground, tears clear in his eyes. Izuku's heart breaks a little as he clears his throat. "Shinso Hitoshi?" he asks, and the boy looks up. Izuku gives a gentle smile. "Hello, can you spare a moment to meet with Nedzu and myself? I'm his human child." Izuku hears a few people gasp around them, but ignores them. "It's nothing bad, I swear." The boy nods hesitantly and Izuku grins wide. "Wonderful. Follow me, please." Dad'll be a moment, he needs to deal with parts of the exam that require his input. The two walk in silence until Shinso speaks up. "Why is this happening?" "That exam is flawed. Quirks like yours are discriminated against even though it would be great for hero work. I'll be doing something similar to what we do with recommendation students when it comes to you, minus the exam portion considering you've already done that. Of course, I'll have to review your practical and then either leave that be or create an exercise plan for you, that is if you pass the interview." Izuku looks to the boy, who is just staring at him. There's a light in his eyes that was missing when he walked out of the exam. "Really? Why yes. If you do pass the interview, you'll be in my class this year and I'll be keeping track of you. After all, this was all my idea." Izuku opens the door to his dad's office and lets Shinso step in before him. He goes to brew some tea, knowing that his dad will want some. Who knew that tea brewing lessons would be something he actually used? Shinso nervously sits on a couch. "Is there anything you want to know about my quirk?" Shinso asks as Izuku is waiting for the water to heat up. "Just how it feels on targets, I suppose. A calmness detachment from his body hits him. He is vaguely aware of his position, and then it goes away." He blinks at the boy in front of him for a moment before a wild grin spreads across his face. "Oh, that is just lovely, perfect for panic acts, could do wonders for people who are on the brink of suicide as well. We'll have to train it, see if you can go past the limits that are on your quirk registry, especially before the sports festival. Such a wonderful quirk, perfect for underground hero work. Aizawa is going to love you." Izuku quickly turns back to the tea and finishes 3 cups as his dad walks in. "Ah, so you are the student Izuku picked out. Am I a dog, a mouse or a bear? That does not matter, I am the principal of UA, and a very proud father." Izuku blushes and nods to his dad, immediately settling into a mindset that has been nurtured over years of being under Nedzu's wing. "Pa. This is Shinso Hitoshi, quirk brainwashing. Its effects are very calming but take away awareness to a degree. Verbal activation I think after questions but most likely can be trained, due to the nature of mental quirks. From files, it can be removed if the target reaches a certain pain threshold, but from experience it can also be removed by the user's own will. Support gear would have to include something that would increase volume using acoustics, since amplification via speakers would negate most voice-activated quirks. It would be best for him to be an underground hero that goes into fights, but having him learn the basics of reconnaissance would be advantageous. Having him follow the underground hero course, along with some classes on how to get a verbal reaction from enemies, is the best course of action. He finishes with a sip of tea, looking to Shinso after a moment of silence. The purple-haired teen is staring at him, a slight blush on his cheeks, mouth open, and a single tear running down his face. "All right, I shall conduct this interview, since Izuku has a bias. However, he will be staying to learn exactly what to do," Nedzu explains as he grabs a clipboard from his desk. He settles on the couch across from Shinso with his cup of tea, taking a sip and humming in approval. Izuku settles in his chair behind the desk to stay out of the way, taking out his own clipboard for notes on how his dad conducts the interviews. Next year, he'll probably participate in them to some extent, either doing what his dad does most years and trying to figure out how to handle the students, or actually conducting interviews. The latter is unlikely, since it's usually the homeroom teachers for the classes that conduct the interviews to see if the students are suited for them or the other teacher more, and Yude has students keep the same homeroom teacher each year. The interview starts with Nedzu asking why Shinso wants to be a hero. A very telling question. The boy takes a moment to think, sipping on the tea before saying, "I want to help the people like me, who are thrown aside by." He glances at Izuku for a second before looking into his tea. "Almost everyone for things that they can't control. I want to protect those that society has deemed as unimportant because of their quirk, or lack of a quirk, or sexuality, or skin color, or anything." Izuku feels his face smiling. He may have selected Shinso based on the quirk the boy possesses, but it's clear that the boy has a heroic drive. Nedzu hums, and Izuku can tell from the look in his little beady black eyes that the animal principal approves. Instead of sticking to typical questions, Nedzu changes it up, as one does when one is Nedzu, and asks, "Who is your favorite hero?" Shinso blinks but answers without hesitating, "Eraserhead." Nedzu's and Izuku's heads tilt at the same time in the same way as the principal asks, "How do you know of him? He is media enemy number one after all." Izuku muffles his chuckles and files the phrase away, knowing that he'll just have to get a large coffee cup with that on it, large enough that he'll use it no matter what it says. "Oh, well, I didn't exactly have the best childhood. My mother abused me when my quirk first manifested. But one night when I was 6 or so, I had run out after she had put a muzzle on me because of my quirk. It had these spikes that would dig into my jaw if I opened my mouth even slightly." Shinso runs his fingers against very faint circular scars on his jaw as he continues, "Eraserhead found me. He saved me from that home and helped me get into one of the better orphanages." Shinso looks down as Nedzu hums. Izuku finds himself looking down at his lap, trying to push certain images out of his head. The things that happened for the first year he was with villains before. They made him kill. What would happen in the month gaps between his assassinations? His body being cut up, being held up by chains. Men with too big hands on his too small body. The boy finds himself shaken out of his memories by Nedzu speaking. He quickly takes a sip of tea, trying to calm himself down as he listens to the answer to a question he doesn't know. "Well, I don't hate it, it's better than living with my mother. But I mean, orphanages aren't supposed to be long-term places. I've been there for a little too long if I'm honest. I know it's probably quirk discrimination, which is another reason I want to be a hero. Helping those orphanages with funding. I might not be able to do too much as an underground hero, because being honest, that's the only way I'll make it past my first year out of school, but I would make enough to donate to the orphanages that are good." Nedzu hums, "Izuku?" The greenet clears his throat. "Yeah? If a student is in institutional care and is admitted to U.A, what happens?" Izuku straightens up as he recites words he had memorized years ago. If a student is under the care of the government, upon admission or event, that student is to become a ward of U.A, under the legal guardianship of the principal and one selected teacher, typically the homeroom teacher. If the homeroom teacher is unavailable to do so, it will be another teacher selected by the principal. They will live on U.A grounds, in the same apartment as the principal and any other wards. On breaks they will have the option to go with the other teacher guardian. Izuku slouches back down and shifts to sit sideways in his chair. So basically, if Shinso were to be admitted, he would live in the same space as us, and knowing you, his other teacher guardian would be Aizawa, hero name Eraserhead. Shinso sharply looks up at Izuku before looking to Nedzu and back to Izuku before his gaze settles on Nedzu. The mammalian principal just chuckles. "Excellent work, Izuku. I'm proud of you." Izuku flushes and shifts his shoulders so the hood on his hoodie can hide his face somewhat. The chimera creature turns to Shinso. "Well, I feel like we've heard enough." Shinso freezes up slightly and Nedzu grins. "Now, if you were any other student, we would make you wait. However, since you will most likely need extra training and since you are Izuku's newest pet project to battle discrimination, the wait would most likely cause issues for my son. So, Shinso Hitoshi, you have been accepted to U.A High School. This is your hero academia." On the first day of classes, Izuku enters his classroom with his dad on his shoulder, supporting him with one hand while looking over the roster for his students at the same time. He has notes on the roster: quirk, Points for those who took the general admissions exam, little things he noted in the recordings of the recommendation students' interviews. Once he had seen the name Ida, he had asked his dad to ask the boy's older brother about him, and Ida Tenya's notebook written in a dark blue sparkly gel pen has the most information. Well, other than Shinso. But that's to be expected when Izuku helps a student train a quirk they've refused to use for a decade. The class quiets down once they see the principal, and Izuku stops at the podium, putting the papers down and looking up. From his shoulder his dad grinned wide. "Hello, Class 1A. Am I a bear, mouse, or dog? It does not matter because I am your principal. Now, I'll be making this quick so that you can all start class. This year, your homeroom teacher is my own son, Izuku." Izuku waves as his dad continues, "If you have any issues with this, please bring them up to me. But do not fear for Izuku not having the qualifications. Despite being the same age as you, Izuku has several college degrees in quirk studies and education. One of the students in this class has even been training with him since the entrance exam as a project to fight discrimination. Before I leave, I would just like to remind everyone here of you today's freestyle teaching that my son will be taking full advantage of for the next 3 years. That is, if any of you survive." The mammal cackles as he climbs off of Izuku. "See you later, Dad," Izuku says as the principal leaves. He turns back to his class and nods to himself. Right, like he said, "I'm Izuku and I'm your homeroom teacher. I'm also an underground hero, and my hero name is Nedzu's human child, because the hero work I do is similar to his." And before anyone questions it, Izuku looks at Ida for a second before sweeping his gaze across the class. "The Hero Commission made a special case for me since villains found me on the streets and made me kill 36 heroes starting when I was 5 and ending when I was 8 and adopted by Nedzu. Now that that's out of the way, Izuku pulls out a box of gym uniforms he had placed in the classroom before, put these on and head to the PE pit outside. If you're not there in 5 minutes, you're expelled." Izuku leaves the classroom and sees Aizawa doing the same. They nod to each other and walk down to the PE pit themselves. Once there, they make sure that the testing robots are all in place, on and synced to Aizawa's phone. Izuku makes sure that he has enough notebooks and the pens he is going to use for both classes in his cargo shorts and hoodie. Eventually, all 40 students are gathered. Aizawa glares at them, his quirk activating and making him look downright terrifying, silencing all talk. For those in Class 1A, I'm Aizawa Shoyuda, homeroom teacher of Class 1B. And also underground hero Eraserhead, Izuku adds in, grinning. And for those in Class 1B, I'm Izuku, homeroom teacher of Class 1A, underground hero Nedzu's human child. Though you won't find much with either of our hero names unless you hack police records or the hero commissions. Underground heroes need privacy, after all. Aizawa continues, "Today, we will be testing your quirks. Whoever is last in both classes will be expelled." There's an uproar of, "That's not fair. What about orientation?" And Izuku laughs. "Life isn't fair, folks. Class 1A has already heard this, but villains don't care about what's fair. If they did, they wouldn't have picked up a kid off the streets and made him kill dozens of heroes before he could even enter middle school, but here I am." Everyone silences at that as Izuku continues, "The world doesn't care about what's fair. Disasters happen. Natural or villain or whatever, and you can't control it. You can only react to it. Rise to the challenge now or leave." After a moment of silence, Izuku claps. "Great. Now onto the exams. Oh, and Shinso?" The mentioned teen looks up. "Since we're going to be doing some heavy quirk training later today, you don't have to participate. In fact, I'm giving you a separate assignment." Izuku pulls out a spare notebook and pencil, motioning for the boy to come forwards. He does so, and Izuku hands the stationery to him. "Take notes, try to figure out everyone's quirk. You'll be graded on observations." Izuku turns to the rest of the students before they can speak and says, "If any of you have a problem with this, please go to Gym Gamma after school to see Shinsu's quirk apprehension test. His quirk is different from all of yours and thus needs some different coursework, though he will be participating in other class activities." And with that the quirk apprehension tests begin. Aizawa and Izuku work well together. They whisper their own observations to each other, Izuku writing them all in his notebooks and coming up with creative ways to use all the quirks he can see. He gives ideas for elements to include in costumes, such as projectiles for Uraraka, or pockets for high-fat foods for Yaoyorozu, or objects for Yanagi to control. One thing that concerns Izuku, and brings up the theory of a certain hero being abusive, is that Todoroki is refusing to use his fire. On the academic exams, he got a 100%. The teenager is smart. He knows he could perform better if he used his fire in certain things. But he's solely using his ice. Izuku needs to figure out how to help his student get out of that home. By now an older sibling, who isn't a villain, must be old enough for custody. And if there is abuse happening, then Izuku knows that his dad will help with the legal side and hire the best lawyers who would be able to remove almost all of Endeavor's assets and have them be put into his children's legal ownership. The next paragraph includes details of GRPNG that may make people feel uncomfortable. Feel free to skip, it's Mineta being a trash person. The paragraph after is not detailed. The one student that Izuku is having issues with is Mineta. He can see how all of the female students are reacting to him, how he keeps on trying to get closer. Izuku wants to punt the short teenager to the moon when he sees the pervert's hands straying as he grabs onto the rear of Yaoyorozu, who freezes at the touch. Izuku sees red when the boy falls into Kodai's chest as she's doing sit-ups and Mineta's hands grope her beard. He can see Shinso looking at Mineta and then him. Izuku makes sure to catch Shinso's eye and mouths. He's going to be gone later. When the tests are finished and Aizawa shows the scores for both of the classes, Izuku speaks up. Now, this was meant to be a logical ruse for my class. However, Shinso and I have both noticed the extremely inappropriate behavior towards the female members of both classes conducted by Mineta. We do not condone such actions at this school. Heroes are meant to protect people, not sexually assault them. Izuku glares at the student and before the short teen can speak, Aizawa's capture weapon is wrapping him up. I'll take care of the paperwork. I'm sure your dad has cameras out here, so there's evidence if someone tries to fight it. Oh, and for my class it was a logical ruse. 1B is dismissed. The tired man nods and starts to walk away, a squirming Mineta in his scarf. Thank you, Aizawa, Izuku says to the back of the underground hero. I hope those of you who want to see why Shinso didn't participate come to Gym Gamma. We need volunteers for helping with his training. Class dismissed. Todoroki, stay back for a moment please. Most of the students leave, other than the son of the number 2 hero. Izuku has had his suspicions for years. Since before Aizawa found him about to kill a student. And now, he can get evidence and help. It's just a matter of approaching this situation. He thinks for a moment and decides to just get it out. Being straightforward can be helpful in this scenario, he decides. Todoroki, I have had my suspicions about how Endeavor treats his family for years after hearing someone who you probably think is dead rant in a bar. Based on what I have seen today, I believe that he was correct. The point I'm trying to get across is that if your father is abusing you, then we can help. We have funds to help, and the best lawyers in the country would always go for Nedzu over Endeavor. Todoroki looks at him, his face blank, but his eyes wide with a hint of shock. The teenager thinks for a moment and says, if there is something happening and he's holding the treatment of my mother over my head, would you be able to help with that? So it's like that. Todoroki Rei is in a hospital, correct? Todoroki nods and Izuku thinks, yes, I believe we would be able to do that. If you need some time to think this over, that's okay. And if you want out help, just say so in class or call the school. Nedzu's the one who answers the phone most of the time, and he's aware of everything. You're free to go. Todoroki nods and leaves with a small bow and quiet, thank you, Izuku-sensei. Izuku watches his back before turning to walk to Gym Gamma. When he reaches the building, he can see Cementos with a group of students, including Shinso. Getting closer, he recognizes a few other students. Ikugu, Ida, Uraraka, Azui, Tokage and Minoma are all in their uniforms, their bags either on their bodies or next to their feet. Izuku grins at Cementos who nods to him. I will just make sure that I have everything as you want it, the gentle giant says, opening the door. Izuku walks in first, Shinso already on his heels. The short teacher is quick to check on everything he wants, consulting a notebook dedicated to his plans for Shinso, making sure that the platforms he had requested are perfect. Izuku nods and gives the elder teacher a thumbs up. This is perfect, thank you. The blocky man nods and leaves. Izuku grins and turns to the small crowd of students. Alright, who here is okay with Shinso using his quirk on you? And no, I will not tell you what it is, just know that it is safe. We're planning this based on how his actual work will go. As an underground hero, no one will know his quirk until it's been used on them or around them. All of the students raise their hands except for Bakugo. Izuku nods and starts to direct them where to stand, between certain platforms and telling them to move from one place to another. He then turns to Shinso and gives him the objective of this exercise. You're going to start there, he points to the highest platform, which has a staircase spiraling up it, and practice jumping down buildings, and using your quirk on multiple people as you do so. Once you have everyone, you'll get them to group together and try and get them to talk. Shinso nods and starts to climb up the stairs, Izuku and Bakugo on the sidelines. Izuku curiously looks to the explosive blonde before shrugging his shoulders and paying attention to his student. Now that he thinks about it, there's something mildly familiar about the teen next to him. Perhaps he had seen the boy on the streets when he was forced to work for villains? Or maybe when he was hacking schools, one of them was Bakugo's. The blonde himself seems to be debating something, if the conflicted expression Izuku can see from the corner of his eye means anything. Before he can ask what's going on, Bakugo speaks up. When did you in class you said you were picked up off the streets? When? Izuku shrugs. I think 4? But they didn't make me kill anyone for about a year. Bakugo nods, mostly to himself. You remind me of a friend I had who disappeared when we were really young. But his mom just said she gave him up for adoption and didn't say anything else. It said everyone in my family off. She ended up leaving town and we haven't seen the beach since. Izuku hums to himself as Shinso reaches the top of his beginning platform. What about me reminds you of him? Bakugo looks at him for a moment before turning back to face Shinso, basically your entire face. Izuku nods and thinks for a moment. There is a chance that he is this mysterious kid from Bakugo's past. He shrugs and says, well, there's a chance that I am that kid, however I won't be able to remember that probably ever. Villains aren't exactly the nicest guys around and trauma leads to memory loss. I really don't remember much of my time with the villains, or anything before that. Izuku watches as Shinso gets the first student he comes across under control, Azui's face turning blank. Izuku can't hear what's being said, but the girl moves to the area behind the first platform, awaiting further instructions. Izuku nods and pulls out his notebook for the brainwashing teen, flipping to the middle and finding the first blank page he can to start his analysis. Next to him, Bakugo seems to be debating something again. Izuku wonders what. He thinks for a moment and comes to a decision as to what to say when Shinso manages to drop and roll after leaping down what would be about 2 stories. If you truly think that I may be your friend, you can tell your family and we can have a meeting about everything that happened. It will not probably the first thing I do in my own office, Izuku admits. Shinso gets Monoma under his control as Bakugo nods. Yeah. I'll talk to my parents about it when I get home. Izuku nods and turns back to focusing on Shinso. He told Monoma something, and the blonde is walking to the same area as Azui, who still has a blank look on her face. The boy has been utilizing random questions to get reactions, but they still need to work on things. Not everyone will answer questions. They've trained his quirk, and since he had refused it for so long, there's so much that he didn't even realize about it. Like the ability to grasp onto any response to him. Sure, nonverbal cues are harder to get under his control, but he's been getting better at it. Perhaps Izuku should ask Kodai to help. She seems to be a quiet Kaderi type. But she passed with mostly rescue points. Shrinking the robots that were about to take down students who were oblivious would have had her pass. But that's not all. She saved one of his own students, Uraraka. He hadn't been there to see it, running off to grab Shinso, but the girl had turned the 0-pointer into the size of a toy car, which admittedly made her pass out from quirk overuse. But the action had raised her up to the number 1 spot in the exam. Shinso, on the other hand, had gotten a few rescue points for grabbing a few students who were in the way of being run over, but it hadn't been enough. He was physically weak. He still is, only a few weeks into training, but he's better. There's progress, and that's all that matters. The thing that has had the most progress is his quirk. If a person is open to his brainwashing, they can be taken under control if they talk to him now, which is a big step. He can also alter memories, and was even able to get present Mike to like ladybugs via suggestion. It might not be ethical, but if there's a bad enough villain that Shinso encounters, it would be great if he could suggest that they turn away from villainy, or at least feel guilt for what they have done. Uraraka, Ida, and Tokage are all grouped together, and Shinso clearly has to focus as he gets them all under his control with one question. They're close enough now that Izuku can hear Shinso tell them, "Go stand behind the platform I started at and stay there until further instructions." Shinso finishes the parkour course after a few minutes, and the two spectators follow him to where all the students are gathered. Shinso takes a deep breath, and Izuku feels a need to encourage his student. He walks over, placing a hand on the taller teen's shoulder, and tells him, "You can do this. You were able to get Aizawa and Yamada to answer questions at the same time, and I'm just asking for them to talk." Shinso catches onto what Izuku is saying, and nods before instructing those under his quirk. Say, "Izuku-sensei doesn't need to drink 2 pots of coffee every morning." Izuku sighs as the students do exactly that, in unison, and then are let go of Shinso's quirk. "Shinso, I've been drinking coffee since I do need 2 pots every morning just to put up with Yamada and Keima." "And that's why you're short," Shinso banters, rocking on his feet. Izuku can see the nervous glances he's giving the other students, and Izuku sighs, walking in front of his protege. What you just experienced was Shinso's quirk. As you can see, it would have been at a disadvantage in the general admissions exam. Tokage, they were fighting massive killer robots, just so you understand. He looks at the recommendation student who nods. Izuku lets his eyes wander over all the students in front of him as he speaks. If you have an issue with Shinso's quirk, keep it to yourself or be faced with punishment for discrimination. Since teenage years are a time of change, we have a 3-strike system for expulsion, but each strike has punishments that increase based on the case. For example, if Uraraka were to call Shinso a villain, the girl looks alarmed and Izuku quickly adds in, which I'm sure she won't do because she has proven to not be a bully. Her eyebrows raise and a soft smile dawns her face. She would have to write a letter on the first strike, be moved to Class 1B on the second strike, and be expelled on the third. If she were to assault him, once more I doubt she would be moved to Gen Ed on the first strike, be suspended on the second based on any injuries, and expelled on the third. Since all of you passed the same academic exam, I'm sure you can imagine any number of combinations based on what would happen. Shinso is a hero student. He was interviewed by Nedzu, and has been training under me since the entrance exams. We will not tolerate him feeling unsafe in this school. All students present nod, and Izuku smiles. Great, now we're going to take a little break, and then we'll have Shinso do one more exercise. Feel free to ask him any questions. You have 15 minutes. The second day of school has Izuku on his laptop in the classroom for Class 1A before class even starts, the teenager typing and muttering away. Shinso is the only one of the students not confused or curious to some degree. He woke up to the slightly younger teacher in their shared living space, drinking coffee from the pot, again, and typing away about an hour ago, and in his time of living in the same space, since the weekend after the entrance exam, he's seen this mode before. Someone needs Izuku's help to catch a villain of some sort. From the mutterings, people are trying to guess, and the purple net can't help but chuckle at every new theory. They think that he's playing a game, or typing an essay, or writing fanfiction. One student, Kaminari he thinks, turns to Shinso. "Hey, you're like his personal student. Do you know what's happening?" Shinso nods, a little sad that now all the fun of his classmates' theories will end. He's doing hero work. Has been for at least an hour, but when I woke up he was halfway finished with a pot of coffee, and I think there were about 2 or 3 freshly tossed filters in the kitchen, so I'm guessing he probably got the assignment last night and hasn't slept yet. A few students turn to him at that, and the girl that had come to help out yesterday, Uraraka, asks, "When you woke up?" Shinso nods. Yeah. If you're in an orphanage or something and get accepted into you live in Nedzu's apartment and Izuku-sensei is his son, so I have to deal with chaotic energy about 24 seriously. Nedzu drinks so much tea, and Izuku-sensei acts like coffee is water. I mean, I like my coffee, but he takes it to a new extreme. Even Aizawa-sensei says so. A few students laugh, and one starts to lecture him but is cut off by the sound of a laptop shutting, bones cracking, and a familiar voice saying, "All right, now that that's done and we have approximately 1 minute until the first bell rings, I recommend everyone stop interrogating the purple boy and sit down." Also, if I were to write hero fanfiction, it would be about how Hawks is a furry because he denies it to the public, but I've seen that overgrown chicken's Tumblr. You think a hero would have better phone security. The bell rings and Izuku moves his laptop and hops up to sit on the podium, kicking his legs back and forth. Alright, since we didn't really do introductions yesterday because I wanted to see everyone's quirks and actions, we'll cover that today. How we're going to do this is everyone is going to come up here, say your name, 3 fun facts, and answer 3 questions. Anyone can ask questions, including myself. Izuku looks down at a notebook in his lap for a second before looking up. "Coda, I can translate for you, so don't push yourself to speak, alright?" The quiet boy nods, singing, "Thank you," a few times. Izuku nods, pulls out 19 notebooks and looks up. "Right, I'll be first and then we'll go from there. My name is Izuku, my favorite food is katsudon. I've assisted in arresting 5,956 villains over the course of 4 years, and I have yet to step foot into my own office. Who has questions?" A few students seem to be hung up on the number of villains Izuku has helped take down, but Bakugu raises his hand. Izuku grins and nods at the blonde, who starts out loud to be heard over the murmurings. "What the F is in those notebooks you keep on writing in?" Izuku grins something sinister, causing many of the class to freeze. "Oh, I was wondering how long until someone in here would ask that." His grin lightens up a little as he says, "Over the past 6-ish years, I've been analyzing hero core students from cameras, vents, and in class. In the beginning, anyone who caught my eye would have a notebook written on how they could improve and ideas for how they should do hero work. Once Dad found one and read through it, he had an assignment of mine be to do it for every hero core student. If any hero core student lasts long enough for me to finish a notebook, it's given to them. Of course, I'll bring up things I think are important after an assignment, like if a student needs to work on something to not hurt themselves with their quirk. That hasn't changed now that I'm a teacher. In fact, Dad would probably ground me if I didn't do it." Izuku shrugs and looks around the class. "Next question?" He sees the sleeve of Hagikure's uniform raise and he calls out her name. She seems a little surprised as she asks, Shinsukuin said that you were working on hero work earlier, but it just looked like you were messing around on your computer and I was wondering what exactly that was?" Izuku nods. Yeah, that might be a little weird if you don't know what it is. Well, what I do for hero work is mostly off-site, underground work. 98% of my work involves using city cameras and using them to track down low-ranking villains and sending their locations to police for arrest, or heroes if there's something like a mugging or gun war going on. However, what you saw this morning was me hacking into things like websites and cameras to locate a high-ranking villain, specifically someone who is a high-level dealer in a drag called Trigger, specifically the types that can be made in America and last for about an hour, or that information is being sent to an agency that I feel is best suited to take him down. Actually, it was your brother's agency. Really good for the things that need to be done fast. Anyways, that type of stuff only makes up about 2% of my work. I also do analysis for heroes if they ask for it, but that's more of support work as opposed to hero work. A few other hands rise and Izuku looks around the class before calling out Kirishima's name. "Have you had any pets?" Izuku chuckles and says, "I have a pet rat that I keep just to annoy my dad, but he won't take hemlock from me because if he tries I will release videos I have of him singing and dancing to music from the 2010s. I've done the same thing for an elderly dog, and next I'm going to get a bear of some sort." Shinso speaks up, "I would die for hemlock, she can eat all of my food." "And that is why you're coming up here, Shinso? Come on, don't be shy, you tall purple baby." Shinso gets up, "I am a week older than you. And I've flipped you into a table before. Until you do the same to me, you are a tall purple baby. Izuku doesn't move as Shinso stands next to the podium. The purple net sighs. Alright, my name is Shinso Hitoshi, I love cats, I like to ride my bicycle, and I'm not good at the whole sleeping thing. Every few nights I'll sleep a full 8 hours, but usually I get about 2 or 3. The boy yawns and rubs his eyes, solidifying his point. Several hands go up and Shinso sighs before looking over Izuku's shoulder to see a roster with pictures and pics. Azui. The frog-like girl lowers her hand. Call me Tsu, Karo. Since you're Izuku-sensei's personal student, are you going to be doing the off-site underground thing too? Shinso shrugs. I mean, partially. I'll also be doing regular underground work, like capturing villains and basically doing what Izuku-sensei tells me to on the ground. The next student selected to as a question is Ida, who asks, while moving his arms like a person trying to be a kung fu robot, what are your motivations for doing work that will be unseen to the public? Shinso shrugs. I just want to help the little guy. People who don't fit society's standards, since there's this whole, if you have a weak quirk you're lesser. Or those who have a villainous quirk but are just kids who were dealt a bad hand in life. I don't need fame, I just need to be there for people who have it bad. Ida got lucky because of Izuku-sensei taking me under his wing. Maybe one day I can pass that on. Kirishima whispers, so manly, and more students raise their hands, but so does Izuku. Shiunso is actually a little thankful that his mentor is doing that. He's a little scared to answer questions about his quirk. Sure, there's the discrimination policy, but he's terrified that somehow students will find a way to hide it and make it seem like it's his fault again. So, he just turns his head to the green net. I'm scared to know your question, but I know that if you don't ask me now, it'll just happen later. Izuku grins. Who is more chaotic, me or my dad? Shinso blinks and looks to his feet for a solid minute before looking up. I have no idea. You're both, so you drink at least 3 pots of coffee every morning, scale buildings for fun, and I'm 96% sure that All Might is scared of you because one time he saw you and literally turned around to walk away. But Nedzu has that maniacal laughter where he tries to drink tea but it's not going in his mouth and somehow it never touches any of the papers on his desk, and he knows everything. He told me it was okay to be gay right before I was about to come out. Like, how did he do that? Izuku shrugs. He did the same to me when I came out as pan. He's just got a gaydar on lock. Shinso nods and moves to sit down as Izuku calls up the next student. Izuku sits in the vents above his class as All Might walks in for their first heroics class. Since the #1 hero has never taught before, and doesn't even have a hero license, Izuku is going to be popping in and helping him. The thing is, All Might doesn't know this fact. He waits as the muscular blonde introduces the exercise, and drops in to stand on the podium in front of the hero before he can click the button for costume cases. The symbol of peace lets out a girly shriek as Izuku calmly addresses the U.Award. Shinso, you'll be participating in this, but also taking notes, so be sure to grab your notebook. I'll be helping All Might since he's probably bad at teaching. I'll also be taking notes on everyone's hero costumes and making adjustments to ensure the safety of everyone. The boy turns around, still standing on the podium. All Might is shaking slightly and Izuku can't help the sadistic grin that spreads across his face at the sight of such a powerful hero trembling before him. Hey Symbol, care to give the students their hero costumes? The man just nods and presses the button, letting the costume cases come out of the wall. Students line up to gather them as Izuku jumps off the podium. The green teenager lands on top of All Might, sitting on the man's muscular shoulder. Right, since you have tall people legs and can carry at least half a dozen people, you'll be my taxi because I am short. Now, mighty taxi, Izuku can hear a Fey student stifle their laughter. Where are we going? What's the exercise? And can we stop by a vending machine so I can get a can of double-shot espresso coffee? As students file out, All Might pulls out a script and hands it to Izuku to read. The boy hums and thinks, let's see, since we have an uneven number of students for this, there should be another student introduced, but we don't exactly have people ready for that yet, so yeah, I'll join a team. All Might blinks at the boy. Oh Beady, won't that be a little unfair? I don't see why it would be. I'm not the type of hero to go out onto the field, even if I do have proper training. Plus, the students have their advantages. 1. Their hero costumes aren't hoodies and shorts. 2. They have quirks. I just have training. They stop in front of a vending machine and Izuku hops down to use a special card that makes it so that Izuku doesn't have to pay to get something. It's useful when he sees students who can't afford a snack but are hungry. You don't have a quirk? All Might asks, looking at the boy in awe. He thought for sure that the boy had some sort of intelligence-based quirk. The man shakes his head. Even if the boy is impressive, he's quirkless. He can't allow the child to go in and risk his life. You shouldn't risk yourself to go in and do this dash. Izuku's voice is cold as he interrupts the elder hero. All Might, that is not your decision. You may be teaching this lesson, but I have more experience in how this school runs. I help run it. I spar with the heroes who work here to help them improve. Third years literally have an entire lesson dedicated to fighting me. I can handle myself. And that's not to mention the fact that I fought actual pros as a child and killed them. Do not underestimate me. I have a hero license for more than just my mind, Yagi. The boy turns around to face the hero, a sinister smile that promises pain to all those who go against the teen across his face. An aura of pain, death, and terror fills the hallway and All Might feels himself deflate in fear. He's fed up. Toshinori's life flashes before his eyes as Izuku walks the short distance between the two, slowly opening the can of coffee and taking a sip. I'd recommend you just listen to me, Yagi. After all, when it comes to teaching, I'm the senpai here. The aura immediately disappears and All Might powers back up into his muscular form. Now, let's go to ground beta, yeah mighty taxi? The boy climbs up the hero as the man slowly starts to walk to the location. Izuku can't help but enjoy the fear that the number one hero now holds for him. He loves it, making people who are that strong afraid of him. The teachers reach ground beta before the students and stand to watch them come in. Hagakure is the first, and Izuku can tell that she feels uncomfortable based on where her feet and hands are. He frowns and can't help but wonder, Hagakure, did the support company just not leave you to be mostly naked? Yes, Izuku-sensei, the girl replies, her voice wavering. That just won't do. That okay, I'll get in contact with a group that will be able to make clothes that are invisible based on some of your DNA. They did the same for their year. Do you feel comfortable participating? The girl clasps her hands in front of her. Well, not really, but I can't tally handly it dash. Izuku shakes his head. Nonsense. Your comfort is important. Izuku jumps off of All Might and walks to a building, quickly pocking inside and grabbing spare clothing he keeps for if an accident happens. Unfortunately, it's only his clothes, but he likes to keep his hoodies big. He grabs the biggest one and walks over to the girl. This will have to do for now, but it should help. I'll contact the support company right after class. Instead of participating, you can go ahead and do Shinsu's extra lesson too. Izuku takes out a spare pencil and notebook, handing them to the girl once she has the hoodie on. Take notes on your classmates' work today and try to analyze them and come up with ways to combat what they did using your abilities. I'll grade it for you after class, all right? Yes, thank you, Izuku-sensei. Izuku nods and walks back to All Might. Well, looks like I won't be participating. There's probably going to be more costumes that will be unfit for 14 and 15-year-olds, so I might just have to send several companies letters. But seriously, just sending a girl out naked. That is so dangerous. Oh ho ho, they are going to wish that it was Dad who contacted them. Shinso walks in next, and Izuku can't help but feel a little bit of pride. A face mask that Izulu had helped design that could change Shinso's voice without manipulating the sound waves into energy waves and back into sound waves so his quirk works. A baton that they've been practicing with that can turn into eskrima sticks if the ends are twisted. A simple dark purple turtleneck and baggy black cargo pants that contain flash bombs and smoke bombs along with pencils and notebooks. Soon, there will be more things he's permitted to carry, but for now they'll stick to the basics. Izuku walks around Shinso to make sure that the costume is up to his own standards, telling the slightly older teen, "We'll get Aizawa to teach you how to use his capture weapon soon, Shinso." He's finally agreed to it, so it's just a matter of contacting the support company. Of course, DNA is required to connect the weapon to you, so I'll be stealing your hairbrush later, but in a week or so you'll get the weapon of your dreams. Izuku watches as more students file in, asking Yaoyorozu if she would like a different costume design and quickly coming up with one that utilizes Velcro to open and close panels she can use to expose skin to use her quirk. Uraraka mentions how she didn't want her costume to be too tight, and he takes note of that as well, telling the girl that he'll have the same design yet lighter, and maybe with light weights over pressure points utilized to eliminate nausea to help with her quirk's backlash. The last costume he has issues with is Todoroki's, but when he approaches the student, the boy whispers to him, "I won't use his fire." Izuku nods, "I understand why you feel that way. I would just like to correct you on one thing. It's not his fire. It's yours. Your quirk is your own." But dash. Izuku speaks up before Todoroki can try to argue with him. "Your mother can't control your ice, can she?" "No dash. And Endeavor can't control your flames, right?" "He can't dash. Who can control both?" "Me," the younger teen says, as if it's a question over if he can or can't control it. "Then it's yours. Just keep that in mind, Todoroki." Izuku leaves the hot and cold teen, and immediately makes his way over to Bakugo. "What's with the massive grenades on your arms?" The blonde smirks. "They store up my sweat and can let off a massive explosion if I pull this pin dash." "Interesting. Take them off for this exercise. You'll be combating your classmates and we don't want someone going to Recovery Girl this early into the school year. I'm trying to beat Aizawa's record." Izuku watches as the blonde starts to get angry, shoving the bracers off. "It's a smart idea, Bakugo, I'm just making sure that no one gets hurt." The blonde huffs and walks away, leaving Izuku with the bracers. They're not heavy for their size, but they are pretty big. Izuku sighs and looks to All Might. "Hey Mighty Taxi, wanna try being an all-haul and helping me out here?" The tall teacher assists Izuku, and the teenager makes his way back up to his perch on the man's shoulder. They stand in front of the class as All Might explains the exercise. When the students all start yelling out questions and All Might panics, Izuku sighs. "Everyone shut up and raise your hands. You aren't kindergartners who haven't been in school before, so act like it." Izuku calls out. The class silences themselves and Izuku nods. "Great, now, let All Might finish speaking before you. Ask questions. And I swear to coffee, you better answer them symbol or else." Izuku's chair gulps a little at the underlying threat, but continues on his explanation before asking for questions. Ida asks if the draw is an effective way of deciding teams, and when All Might looks a little nervous about answering, Izuku speaks up. "In the field, you'll have to work with people you don't choose all the time. Even I have to work with people that I don't know much about when I'm working with the cameras in capturing villains. Take advantage over the fact that you'll be able to plan." The boy nods, and next to raise their hand and be called on is Uraraka, who looks around. "Isn't this a little unfair, since it's pairs and we don't have an even number of students?" Hagakure speaks up. "Oh, there were complications in my hero suit, so Izuku-sensei is letting me sit out the actual activity, but I'm going to be doing Shinsu's extra assignment instead. He even gave me this hoodie to wear." A few of the girls seem to brighten up at that, and a few send grateful looks to Izuku. Izuku nods to the student before asking, "Any more questions?" After a moment of silence, Izuku nods and the teams are assigned. The first match is decided to be Uraraka and Shinso as heroes versus Ida and Bakugo as villains. All Might gives the teams maps, communication devices, and capture tape before guiding the rest of the class to another building on the edge of the city-like grounds, where they can observe the cameras. Hagakure moves to the front so that she can easily observe the cameras, opening the notebook and readying her pencil. Izuku is already taking notes on how the students are interacting with each other and how they should change things up. For Bakugo, he notes that the blonde needs to actually communicate with those he is going to work with and try to acknowledge their skills. He completely blows Ida off and walks away, clearly not paying attention to the fact that Ida would do better at scouting considering his speedy quirk. It's disrespectful. If Bakugo did that with other heroes in the field, he wouldn't be able to work on big cases at all. Even Endeavor, a hero known to look down on others, works with heroes he has to. He's not civil all the time, sure, but he listens to them and plans with them. Bakugo just blows Ida off. Ida needs to loosen up a little, Izuku decides. There's a rigidity that persists in his body language. He sticks to rules, which can be good, yes, but sometimes the rules need to be bent a little. The Greenick can't help but think of the boy's easygoing elder brother. The older Ida is very laid back, kind, and trustworthy. Tensei is the type of person that spends his days off either with his family or helping those less fortunate. He's come by you today before, and always greets Izuku with a hair ruffle and a candy. Izuku shakes himself out of thinking about the pro-hero and instead writes that the man's younger brother needs to focus on relaxing and not always being a stickler for rules. When it comes to Uraraka, Izuku decides that the girl needs to take more initiative. Shinso offers her a plan and she just accepts it apparently. There's no discussion, it's just a leader and a follower. Maybe he should help her with self-confidence by giving her strategies? He decides to write a few down in the notebook on her as he tries to come up with something for his personal student. He writes about picking up things she can float, sneaking around so that she can use her quirk on others to confuse them and get an advantage, along with giving her advice to work on hand-to-hand combat, since her quirk requires her to get in close to a villain. Shinso is harder to take notes on, just because Izuku has been doing so for longer. But that doesn't mean he isn't inspired to write. No, this is a new situation for his student, new things to analyze, new notes to take, new weaknesses to improve on. Shinso seems a little hesitant to talk to Uraraka. But Izuku already knows that, and Shinso already knows that, so he doesn't make note of it. That's what happens with childhood bullying and trauma. He does, however, write that Shinso needs to work on actually activating his quirk as quickly as possible. The first encounter the heroes have with Bakugo shows the slight hesitation Shinso has in using his quirk. Luckily, Bakugo stops to monologue or something for a second, so he's quickly captured. The rest of the battle trial is simple, and when they get back Shinso is labeled as the MVP by Yaoyorozu. Izuku nods along to her analysis of every student and compliments her, causing the proper girl to blush and thank Izuku for his kind words. Izuku decides to add a note about her self-confidence as he turns to watch the next battle. The third day of school has Izuku covering quirk studies with Class 1B as one of their hero course classes. He feels a little sorry for 1A, since they have to deal with Aizawa during their hero laws course at the same time, but pushes that down. 1B has to deal with the tired man way more often. Besides, now he can observe the other hero course students easier. He walks into a calm classroom, pleased to see that all the students have notebooks out and ready. Izuku himself moves to sit on the podium and waits for the bell to signify class starting. After a moment, it rings and Izuku claps his hands. Alright, so while most teachers would probably have this first lesson be something like the types of quirks, what they typically cover, and the differences, I'm different. And that difference is because I don't have a quirk. A few students look at him in shock, and one even tries to say something before he gets hit on the back of the head. Izuku chuckles to himself as he continues on with his lecture. That's right. It's really rare for our generation, about 5%. But that hasn't stopped me. I've had to develop my mind to be able to do my job, even if I am what most would call an off-site underground hero. But I have experience in the field, and can even take down people with very powerful quirks. Where's the proof? Someone calls out and Izuku thinks for a second before deciding that yes, he should instill some fear into these students. It's good for the heart. Tell me, does anyone know the fate of pro-hero Onigari? Izuku asks. Kendo raises her hand and the Greenet calls upon her to answer. Onigari was assassinated brutally by a villain that has yet to be captured. Izuku shrugged, mostly right. I was captured though and was forced to do that by a group of villains. Well, captured isn't really the right word. I don't exactly know the proper word for being brought in by Aizawa when I slipped up and asked if he was going to save me right before I killed one of his students. The classroom is silent for a moment before someone asks, "Wait, are you serious, Izuku-sensei?" Izuku nods, 100% serious. I even have pictures, I think. Hold on. Izuku pulls out his phone, connects it to the projector in the room via Bluetooth, and starts to scroll through his gallery. A large version of his phone's screen covers the whiteboard next to him as he scrolls down to find the pictures he had transferred to his phone, All selfies from when he had killed someone so that he could send it to superiors in the villain group so that they would know he did his job. He eventually finds the most recent of the 36 onigiri. He clicks on it, showing the origami hero's mutilated body and a child Izuku throwing up a peace sign. This was the last of my killings, but I had 35 more beforehand, all spanning over about 3 years, one each month, Izuku explains. Most of the class is horrified, either their face or body language giving it away. One student, he thinks it's Monoma, has grabbed a trash can and is puking into it. The only student who seems to be unfazed is Kodai. Interesting. Izuku shuts off his phone, making the picture disappear. And that is a lesson on rule number 1 class. Never underestimate your enemies. There are villains who have what some may call weak quirks or are like me and don't have a quirk at all. But that doesn't make them weak. The quirkless can take advantages that many others can't. And in this quirkless society, villains are more likely to have weak quirks or no quirk. Only a small percentage actually have powerful quirks, and those are the ones that the big shots usually take care of. But even if you are gunning for underground heroics or just being a rescue hero, you might encounter them. The class is still recovering from the shock of the image, and Izuku hums for a moment before looking to his student of interest. Kodai, your quirk lets you change the size of things, right? The girl nods once and Izuku grins. Great. Now, class, if I were to attack Kodai as a villain, I would do so in a way that doesn't utilize weapons. Pure hand-to-hand, straight for the neck to either kill her in one blow, or hit the pressure point that makes her pass out. Kendo. The ginger looks at him and he grins. Your quick lets you change the size of your hands, correct? She nods and Izuku hums. Let's see, for you it would be a simple bullet straight to the head. Izuku looks around the room before deciding on his last example. Rin, you can turn your skin into scales that can be used for offense and defense, right? The Chinese boy nods and Izuku has to think for a moment before he says, attack on the weak points using heavy projectiles from a slingshot until you hurt so much that you can't focus before moving in for a finishing blow. The class watches as Izuku stands up on the podium. The fact is that most people rely too much on their quirks. Heroes and villains. This class will eventually teach you how to look out for weaknesses in quirks, when people use quirks too much, and how to compensate for your own weaknesses. Koda, how would you combat me in the scenario I presented to you? The girl blinks. Fight you hand-to-hand or use something nearby to knock you out. Izuku nods and looks to his second victim. Kendo, how about you? The girl frowns for a moment before asking more than saying, bulletproof armor? Izuku nods. Yeah, that could work. Rin. The boy thinks for a moment. Take out the villain before they have the time to put me in too much pain. Izuku nods. Good thinking. And that's great advice in general. Take down villains as fast as you can. Minimize how much damage they do, but don't kill them. Most villains don't have useful information and work alone, but they can know rumors. And villains who work with a group can give information about the group that can help in an investigation. It may not always be facts, but in our lifetime there's a detective who has a quirk that helps with people telling the truth or not. He won't always be around, so we will have to cover how to tell if someone is lying via body language. But, for the time being, most villains who work with a group are eventually questioned by him. Izuku jumps up from his perch on the podium and grabs a hold of the vent on the ceiling. He pulls himself up, reaches in, and grabs a folder he had put there before class began. He lands on the podium, bending his knees, and tosses the folder to land on Kendo's desk. Please pass those out. There's one that is in English for Tsunatori, so be sure that one gets to her, he says to the ginger before addressing the entire class. What you are being given is your first assignment. There is a list of scenarios that include a villain with a weak quirk or is quirkless, and a hero. The villain is attacking the hero in certain ways, and you have to come up with ways for the hero to combat them. I'll be grading on practicality, however if you are creative, you will be able to gain extra credit. If you have any questions, feel free to come ask me. I expect this to be done by the end of class. However, if you are struggling and come talk to me about it, I will give you until tomorrow morning. That does not give you an excuse to goof off. I will only give extra time to those who actually need it. Understood? A chorus of agreement fills the room and Izuku nods. He moves to sit on the podium once more, taking out notebooks and quickly doing his analysis over the students who answered him. He takes out a fresh notebook and decides that he needs to observe Kodai to see if she really is what he needs for Shinsu's training. All interactions so far have pointed to yes. Awaze approaches him and Izuku looks up, giving the boy a small smile. Yes, Awaze? The boy shifts on his feet. I don't exactly understand what this villain is trying to do. Can you explain it to me? He asks, showing the paper and pointing to the third scenario. A villain who is quirkless is using pepper spray with a dispenser that aerosolizes the substance against a hero who has a quirk similar to hound dogs. Izuku nods. The villain in that scenario is using the fact that the hero has a quirk that makes their sense of smell heightened. Pepper spray in general hurts like nobody's business, but having it aerosolized makes it so that it stays in the air and is breathed in, which would cause severe difficulties for a hero who has a quirk that has heightened sense of smell, because it burns like a fire but worse. The boy's eyes fill with an understanding as he quickly thanks Izuku and gets back to his seat. Izuku continues on writing notes, answering the occasional question from a student. When the class PRD ends, Izuku simply walks over to the window and crawls out, opting to walk along the narrow ledge on the side of the building to then enter Class 1A so that he can give them the same lesson. He enters the classroom through the window easily, humming to himself as he moves to sit on the podium. He thinks for a second and decides to take the short break between classes to curl up and rest his eyes. He curls his body into a ball and covers most of the top of the podium, yawning as he closes his eyes. The bell should wake him up if he dozes off. He should ask Aizawa for a sleeping bag. Oh, maybe he can get one in green. When the bell rings, Yuka stretches out and yawns, moving Ho's body automatically to sit and starts up the lecture he had in the previous class. It's repetitive, except for the reactions to Izuku once murdering heroes. A few students are in disbelief, but Shinso just shrugs and says, "Yeah, that makes sense." A few of his peers turn to the purple net and the boy shrugs. I mean, he was found and adopted by Nedzu for some reason, right? Plus, it's a little weird for someone our age to have a hero license and have had it for years. The only instance that happens is when it comes to reformed villains or vigilantes, and Izuku-sensei did mention it on the first day that he was forced to kill heroes. Did you guys just not pay attention, or did you forget? Izuku chuckles lightly and watches as some students take in Shinsu's words and reflect on them. The class settles down and Izuku decides that no, he will not traumatize this class with the image of a child in front of a recently killed corpse. He instead starts on with the more interactive parts of the lesson, pointing to Kirishima. A villain attacks you and aims for your joints with a bow stick. What do you do? Kirishima blinks and thinks for a second. Wrestle the weapon away and knock the villain out? Izuku nods. Good job on knocking the villain out. Do that ASAP when it comes to field work. Don't prolong battles that can be ended quickly. Izuku hums to himself before pointing to Azui. A villain sets fire to a warehouse only you two are in. How do you proceed? The girl ribbits. Quickly grab them with my tongue and escape. If I can't get them, escape and keep watch on a tall building nearby to see the surrounding area while rehydrating. Izuku nods. Good job. He then points to Tokoyami. A villain with a weak quirk that allows them to glow brightly attacks you in the middle of the day. The edgy teen thinks for a moment before saying, utilizing a long-range weapon of some sort, perhaps a tranquilizing gun? Izuku nods. Innovative, I like it. Be sure to incapacitate villains, but don't kill them. They can give you useful information, and it's seen as excessive force and you could get a strike from the Hero Commission unless you're able to manipulate them into letting it happen, or being a high enough ranking hero that they don't care. We will not be teaching you how to do the former at this school. Izuku pulls out the assignment from the vents and gives it to Shinso to hand out. Once everyone starts working, Izuku settles back down to take notes on his student, however someone enters the classroom. Well, their head does. Izuku blinks at Togata Mirio, who just says, Izuku, Tamaki is panicking real bad and he's asking for you. Izuku moves off the podium and leaves the classroom, asking, where is he? Mirio doesn't hesitate as he picks up the teacher and runs through the school, stopping in front of a storage closet. Izuku enters, loud enough to announce his presence, but quiet enough that he won't startle the older teenager inside. Tamaki is on the ground, holding his knees together and muttering Izuku's name over and over. Once the nervous boy sees him, Izuku is immediately grabbed and held close to a firm chest. Hey, Tamaki, I'm alright, everything's fine, Izuku says. The older teenager just pulls Izuku closer, causing the smaller teen to blush. He knows why. He's known that his feelings for the nervous wreck of a teenager aren't solely platonic, but he tries to not let that be an issue. What first started as admiration for Tamaki doing his best turned into wanting to help him be better. He had gotten close, and had found that certain things the depressed boy did to be cute. But all he did was acknowledge the feelings. And now the core root for them is holding him close. I heard a first year say that you're no good and that they were going to try and hurt you, Tamaki says after a few minutes, and Izuku feels something warm and fuzzy start in his chest. Not uncommon, but the intensity of it is. Tamaki had panicked because he thought Izuku was in danger? Izuku shoves his feelings away. I'm fine, Tamaki, really. If they try anything, they'll be expelled. But only after you've been hurt, the boy mumbles. He still hasn't let go of Izuku, still holding the shorter greenet close to his chest. I don't want you to get hurt. Izuku can't really fight that, so he just wraps his arms around the other, quietly sitting in the storage closet. The fourth day of school starts off with a very tired Izuku. After his encounter the previous day with Tamaki, he's been a little nervous to be in the classroom for his homeroom class. How exactly can he face them after just leaving them because someone they don't even know was panicking? It was extremely unprofessional. He should have handled it better. Call in someone to watch over the class. Asked Mirio to help watch the class. Not left his class alone. He needs to bullshit his way out of this one. Okay, he left them alone and Ida took charge. They're supposed to be choosing class representatives today. Oh, he can easily work with this. Izuku did bullshit his way into being adopted by Nedzu. He nods to himself as students start to walk in. Shinso is one of the first coming in with Ida. The latter moves to speak to Izuku, but the greenet holds up his hand. All will be explained once class starts. That is, if you really did understand the lesson I was trying to teach correctly. Izuku keeps a blank face at Shinsu's look of confusion. He can't help but enjoy the look of shock on his student's face. Izuku had just asked him what had happened and left it at that. And now he has a plan. Students file in slowly over the next 30 minutes, rushing in larger groups starting at 10 minutes till class. All the while, Izuku keeps up the "if you don't understand it after class, ask Shinso. If he doesn't know, I have made a mistake with him." The pressure is on Shinso, maybe, but the connection is so obvious. If Shinso doesn't understand it, Izuku will walk straight into the sea. Goodbye world of the living, hello fish. Once the bell for the start of the class rings, Izuku stands up. Alright kiddies, today is going to mold the rest of your high school careers at this institution. That gets their attention. Today, Izuku pauses, turning around so that he's no longer facing the students. You are going to choose. Izuku flips backwards onto Shinsu's desk, your class representative. Izuku faces the class once more, holding several pieces of paper in one hand and pens in the other. Izuku looks down at Shinso and watches as the boy makes the connection, his face going from confused to understanding. Good, his bullshitting is working. Izuku grins and sits on Shinsu's desk, his feet in the taller's lap. The purple net sighs, putting his hands on the shorter's knees and resting his head on them. God help me, the taller sighs. Oh, he can't help you. I ate him. Very pitiful meal, I will admit, Izuku says, stretching his arms. Though, it did burn going down. Spicy, the purple boy says before moving his head to look up at Izuku. So, the whole running out thing was for this? You know it. Izuku says, a cheeky grin on his face. Oh, and Shinso can't be class rep. Underground hero reasons, mostly. Izuku says before tossing the papers in the air. Somehow, as if by some miracle, each student has a paper on their desk. Vote for whoever you want other than Purple Baby Boy. I'm going to use him as a pillow. Izuku shifts for a moment but then sits down in Shinsu's lap, curling up around the boy and closing his eyes. Shinso knows he's not sleeping, that can be told by the way that the purple net is resting one arm around Izuku's waist. It's a system that Izuku asked for, so that he can listen to the class. And also get human touch, but that's something Shinso doesn't need to know about. It's not like Izuku likes being held by people or anything. That's stupid. I'll make a ballot box for everyone to put their votes into. Yaoyorozu says, and after a moment Izuku hears something being placed on the podium behind him. Shinso shifts his body, probably to write his vote, and Izuku can't help the slight flush to his face as Shinso's arm wraps around him tightly and moves the greenet. Izuku just hides his face in the taller's shoulder, relaxing his body. There's several students moving after a moment and Izuku can hear Shinso sigh before the purple net's baritone voice asks someone, "Hey, can you put my vote in? I can't exactly move." "Sure thing, Shinso," Uraraka says. After a few moments, there's no more shuffling and Izuku sits up full, cracking his neck and fingers as he maneuvers himself to sit on the top of the desk once more. "I'll be counting everyone's votes now. While I do that, I think it's best for us to cover what to do during emergencies. Shinso, Dad taught you everything, right?" Izuku looks at the boy who nods. "Great. Teach your classmates, I'll be tallying up everything on the board." Izuku gets off the desk, grabs the ballot box and grabs some chalk. He can hear Shinso get up and start talking to the class as Izuku writes down Ida's name first, putting a few ticks next to it before another name comes up. Yaoyorozu gets a few votes before it goes back to Ida, one for Bakugo, one for Ashido, one for Kirishima, more for Ida and a few for Yaoyorozu. Izuku nods to himself and looks to Shinso, who has started to talk about the procedures for evacuation. After Shinso finishes, Izuku shows the results to the class. Ida and Yaoyorozu tied for first, most of the class choosing between the two. I'd suggest just having 2 class reps. It's been done before and those classes tend to be more organized at least. Izuku tells the class. At lunch, Izuku retreats to his dad's office. It's nice, cozy, and Lunch Rush always sends something nice for Izuku to eat. When he enters today, there's a student being scolded by his dad. Izuku ignores the other teenager, instead moving to grab the bento in a green box and settling on his chair, moving his dad, who is in his chair, to the side to check his emails. Nedzu doesn't react at all, but the student is looking at Izuku like the greenet is insane, which, fair. Izuku replies to a few emails, including one sent from a Bakugo Mitsuki. Ah, right, the whole thing where he might be his student's long-lost friend. He sends a few days back for a meeting regarding that and closes out of the web browser to instead open the security camera feeds. He watches the lunchroom with one eye, and the front gate where a horde of reporters are stationed. There's an odd figure with the reporters that catches Izuku's attention. His dad is still lecturing the student when the figure reaches out and the front gate disintegrates. Izuku is quick to hit an alarm that alerts the police. He gets on the PA, media has entered the campus. Students, keep calm. Teachers, please keep the media outside of buildings. He shuts off the PA and turns to his dad. There was another figure. Not the media, I think. Looked like a thug or something, but could be a very powerful villain. Has some sort of disintegration quirk. I'll check nearby cameras tonight to get more information. We should have the students go home early so Power Loader can fix the gate ASAP and I can see what the person has already done or is going to do. Nedzu nods. Good job, Izuku. I'll send out appropriate emails in just a moment. The student in the room with them looks alarmed and Izuku is quick to turn on them, trying to channel Aizawa. Everything I just said stays here, got it? The student quickly nods and Izuku nods once before getting up. I'm going to go make sure my students aren't being idiots. When Izuku gets to class 1A, most of his class is there. Only Ashido is missing, and Izuku is about to go look for her when he's intercepted at the door by a certain third year. Tamaki wraps up Izuku in a hug. Izuku freezes slightly before hugging the older back. I was so worried you would get hurt, Tamaki says, and Izuku shrugs. I'm okay, Tamaki. Everything's fine. You should go back to your class. Your teacher will be looking for you. But the person I heard say they were going to attack you is probably from 1B and Shinso will just brainwash them away. Or I'll hit a pressure point and make them pass out. Or Inui will hear you say these things and then I'll have a teacher acting as a guard dog for the next 3 years. The safest place for me is in these walls, Tamaki. The third year reluctantly lets go and walks down the hall to his own class, passing by a rushing Ishido who stops in front of Izuku, hands on her knees as she pants. Was not in that bathroom. Heard people talking. Recorded, she takes a gulp of air. Things on my phone. You don't need to hear this. Izuku quickly shifts his focus to his pink student. Why do I need to hear it? Izuku asks, his voice low. Ishido takes a deep breath and matches his volume. Someone was talking about killing All Might. Very seriously. Izuku curses under his breath before turning to the class. Shinso, escort Ishido to Dad's office, then go immediately to the apartment. Students are going to be released after security does a sweep of the area so that no one will be harassed. Izuku lets the two students go before turning to the rest of the class. Good job on getting here before me. I couldn't check the cameras at the time, so Yaoyorozu, the female class rep, looks up. What happened from your perspective? The girl blinks before standing up. Well, the alarm went off and then your voice alerted to us that it was the media. Most of the class was sitting together, so Ida and I did our best to keep everyone together. Shinso showed us another way to get to the classroom that went out a side exit that most of the students seemed to ignore. A few students from 1B were with us, so we had them wait with us until we heard the rest of their class. Izuku nods. Good job at keeping together. You all did good. Have some free time until you're released. I need to help with the security check. Izuku stands on Shinsu's empty desk, jumping up and grabbing the space between ceiling tiles. He pushes one up and aside before reaching in and grabbing his laptop. He slides the device under his arm before shifting the tile back and jumping down, landing in a crouch on the desk. He sits down and quickly gets to work, looking over the cameras of the remote areas of campus and finding nothing. He relays this to the other teachers, and a few moments later, the classes are released. Izuku walks to his dad's office and finds Ishido still there, Nedzu looking down at her phone. Dad? He asks, coming in and moving to his chair next to the rodent. Were you able to listen to this, Izuku? Nedzu asks, his voice tight. No, I didn't want to worry my class after Ishido told me people were talking about killing All Might seriously. Izuku keeps back his sarcastic quips relating to the number one hero. This is serious time. Ishido, please play it once more for Izuku. The girl nods and reaches out, hitting play on an MP3 file. Riki, these are all the lesson plans that involve All Might for the next week. A voice that sounds like it's going through a distorter says. And the brat? A voice that almost sends Izuku back in time asks. Anything that's both of them is marked with a yellow post-it. The distorted voice replies. Good. Sensei will be pleased with this. The recording ends after a moment of silence and Izuku speaks. Shigaraki Tamura. Quirk. Decay. 5-finger point activation. The sensei he's talking about basically adopted him and mentally abused him into hating heroes after something happened with his original family. He has these dismembered hands that are from his original family. I don't know if he killed them with a quirk accident or if sensei took them out to get to Shigaraki, Izuku says. He can't really feel emotions, but he knows that the information will maybe be useful. That's what matters, information. He can work with that. He should come up with theories, but his head feels foggy. There's someone talking, but Izuku can't really focus on it. He can't really focus on anything. Thoughts are slipping past him. He tries to grasp at them. The only thing he knows is that he's staring at a corner of his dad's office. The corner that has photo albums disguised as quirk theory books. Then there's purple. It takes Izuku a moment to move his eyes to the purple and he sees someone. Someone important. They're talking and Izuku tries to focus on the words. Then it all comes flooding back. Izuku gasps and grabs his head, closing his eyes and shoving his hands against his ears. He's quick to say, I'm alright, just sensory overload. Coming back from dissociation. There's a cool hand with long fingers running through his hair that feels nice. He leans into it and feels himself grow tired. In a moment, Izuku is fast asleep. There's a small group of people in an apartment that most of them live in. Izuku and Shinso are next to each other on the black couch. Izuku's seat is a recliner that has the leg rest up, with Shinsu's legs thrown over his own. Izuku is resting his head on the taller's chest, Shinsu's arm wrapped around him. The soft sweater Esensu wears is soft on Izuku's cheek. Izuku needs this. The touch is grounding. And after hearing his voice and realizing that he knows where Izuku is, the green it needs as much comfort as he can get. The boy he's cuddling is in a weird state of shock. It makes sense, Izuku supposes. A person who hasn't spent all of their life analyzing would be in shock after finding out that All Might, the symbol of peace, is really a limp spaghetti noodle. But then again, Izuku kinda hates flashy heroes, so maybe the slight hero worship most normal people have for the number one hero is affecting Shinso. He knows he's analyzing the situation to deal with everything, but it's keeping him from breaking down again. Nedzu sits in a comically large armchair that dwarfs him to an extreme, a good 6 inches between his feet and the edge of the cushion as he leans on the tall back. And one deflated All Might is sitting in a comically small chair, his knees up to his ears and his butt half off the chair. If Izuku was in his normal state of mind, he might make a joke or jab, take a picture, something. Instead, he just traces scars covered by his hoodie. And lastly, in a chair that actually matches his size, is Detective Tsukachi. The man has headphones on as he listens to the MP3 file from Ishido. He had interviewed the girl, and deemed her to not be the traitor of you, letting her go home with an ectoplasm clone escort. The man sighs as he takes off the headset. The voice distorter is making it difficult to identify anyone. What's it look like on the cameras? Izuku groans. Whoever it was could turn off the cameras somehow, which limits it to someone using their quirk or having access to the cameras. That list is extremely short. I don't like people messing with my cameras. Should we only limit it to teachers? Shinso asks. I mean, sure there's the lesson plans thing, but there's quirks that could explain either thing. A few could even explain both. Shinso has a point. We should check what cameras we can to narrow down those who might be of interest. When we have a list, we'll need to narrow it down further and figure out just who we need to question. Nedzu says. He thinks for a moment. The traitor is most likely a student, all things considered. The teachers are all pro-heroes and care for Izuku. We will still have them talk to you, detective, but more so to just cover all our bases. In the meanwhile, Shinso and Izuku should review the footage together and mark off all students who were seen caught up in the commotion. Izuku thinks for a moment. Class 1A and a few students from 1B took a side hallway to get out of the cafeteria. We'll need to check the cameras there too. Though, Yaoyorozu didn't mention which one will be able to figure it out. I was with them, remember, Shinso says. I know what hallway we went into, so there will be no time wasted on trying to figure that out. What should we do now? All Might asks after a moment. Nedzu hums. Well, I suppose the best course of action would be to increase the amount of heroes in lessons involving All Might and or Izuku. At least one of Ectoplasm's clones so we can be alerted easily. Any hero that is on break, also. Of course, we will be giving them a small raise. Izuku hums, just don't have we know I'm in danger until there's an attack. He'll get crazy again and ignore his job. The use of until ISN, T unnoticed by others in the room. Nedzu just nods slightly, Shinso tightens his grip, and the detective nods. However, All Might looks to the boy and says, well, there's no reason to be so negative and assume there's going to be an attack dash. Izuku shifts so that he can look the number one hero in the eyes as an aura that is almost evil surrounds the boy. Yagi, kindly shut the F up. In case you somehow didn't get the FING memo, the guy who's talking to the traitor and his sensei are people who abused me. Shinsu's arms tighten again and Izuku actually finds comfort from it, relaxing his body, but his voice is still harsh. I lived with them for 4 years. And for most of that I was either being chained up to a wall left in the room of psychopaths, RPSTS and the scum of the streets, or being forced to analyze and assassinate heroes for a man you supposedly killed 5 years ago. But the fact that Shigaraki is referring to his sensei proves that you failed. All for One is alive, and his disciples are coming for both of our heads. All Might sputters. I mean, there's no saying that's the case, truly dash. Yagi, Nedzu growls out the name like it's poison on his tongue. My son spent 4 years of his life analyzing this BSRD. If he says that All for One is alive then he is, and you are in no state to fight him. The only reason I am not demanding we find a suitable vessel for One for All is because All for One is most likely injured either as bad or worse than you. There's reasons behind Shigaraki first off being here and second off wanting you dead. All for One is most likely unable to move, and they want to end One for All now. So deal with the fact that some point, most likely soon, Beta will be under attack, hunting for you and Izuku. The shrunken man closes in on himself as he's lectured by the principal. Tsukachi sighs and shakes his head. Really, Toshi, there's a reason Izuku is a fully licensed hero at age. Just because he's a kid doesn't mean anything when it comes to intelligence. He's Nedzu's adopted son for a reason. The number one hero looks even more ashamed and Izuku hums, satisfied. He turns his head to shove it in Shinsu's chest. I'm emotionally drained. Shinso, prepare to be my actual pillow instead of just a logical ruse for the class for the next few hours. Izuku closes his eyes, yawning slightly and snuggles into his friend. Plus. When Izuku wakes up, there's a weighted blanket on his legs and lower torso. An arm is wrapped around his shoulders, holding him close to a warm chest. His mouth feels dry and tacky, but he doesn't want to move for water. He knows where he is, waking up quickly and knowing his location was needed when he was with villains, but he finds that he doesn't really give a flying F-. Shinso is also asleep, based on the steady rise and fall of his chest that moves Izuku's head. Somehow, Izuku feels safe. That's weird in itself. Izuku rarely feels safe. And after hearing Shigaraki working with someone to come after him, the green-it, logically, shouldn't feel safe. But, in an apartment that sits on the top floor of UA with his friend's arms around him, he feels safe. Izuku wonders how long it will last. He rubs his eyes with one hand, the other under Shinso. He yawns and pulls out his phone, checking the time. It's only a few hours after the students had been released, a few hours since he passed out from emotional exhaustion. He opens his emails quickly, and sees one from the Bakugo matriarch saying she's available for the next day for their meeting, and also asking about why her son was sent home early since apparently his explosive student isn't telling her anything. Izuku quickly tells her that there was an incident with the press using their quirks to get onto campus and they're repairing damages and taking precautions so that it won't happen again. He adds in the meeting to his calendar before thinking. His dad told him to take the day off of hero work before the meeting with All Might and the detective, and he bets that Nedzu has already denied Izuku access to any cameras. The boy decides to play a game and swipes to the only one he has on his phone. It's a tower defense one that for some reason has a monkey versus balloons theme. It was a few $100, but it's fun. Apparently it's from the pre-quirk era, so a lot of people ignore it, opting for newer games. But Izuku finds it to be fun. Plus the sound of balloons popping comforts him for some reason. He shifts a little so that his phone can rest on Shinsu's arm as he plays, the volume low enough that it won't disturb the still slumbering purplenet. He plays a few rounds before there's a disturbance. His dad walks in and nods to him. I see you're awake. Do you need anything? The Chimera's voice is quiet, not disturbing Shinso. They both know that the taller teen needs all the sleep he can get. Izuku, a cup of water would be nice, he says, voice matching the volume of his dad. The white-furred animal leaves, soon coming back with a cup of water that has a long loopy straw in it. Izuku fixes his dad with a deadpan stare before taking the straw between his lips and drinking. He knows the logic behind it, not wanting to move too much to disturb Shinso. But the fact that Nedzu chose an over-the-top straw with more loops than Izuku can count on his fingers is a little wild. Shinso shifts a little, and it's only Izuku's quick reflexes that stops the water from spilling. Izuku, I would like to ask you about something, Nedzu says, settling into the large chair once more. Izuku blinks before turning his phone screen off and looking to his dad. What's up? I was wondering exactly the relationship between you and Amajiki. Izuku blushes and is quick to respond. We're friends and he's protective. Nedzu hums to himself as he looks down to his paws. After thinking for a moment he says, Izuku, I just want you to be safe. Emotionally as well as physically. I'm afraid that if you get too close, you'll end up hurt. Izuku stiffens for a moment and has to force himself to relax before he speaks. What do you mean? Nedzu sighs and seems to contemplate something before speaking. I can make a pretty good guess on your feelings to Amajiki, however I have good reasons to believe that he doesn't feel the same. Just be careful, Izuku. Please. Izuku blinks before looking away from his dad. He stares at Shinsu's sweater and can't help but argue his dad in his head. Tamaki is sweet to him, and overprotective too. He's not protective over anyone else like he is over Izuku. That counts for something, right? It must. It's logical that if one is protective they care. And since Izuku is the only one Tamaki is protective over, he must care for Izuku. More than he cares about anyone else. Even Mirio. That counts for something. And Nedzu's been wrong before. He told Izuku that All Might had killed All for One. But that wasn't the case. The only person Shigaraki would ever refer to as sensei is All for One. He has to be alive. Izuku just closes his eyes and shoves all of that down. There's too much going on right now and he just needs to take a moment and breathe. He curls closer to Shinso and begs for sleep to find him once more. The day after Shigaraki destroyed the front gate was full of packed lessons due to losing a day. Izuku and Aizawa had come up with a plan with the other teachers. All of the subjects they had before lunch were still in the early stages, and the work was easy. So, instead of extra study time or free time, the other teachers would go over the materials they were supposed to learn the day before. Then, Izuku and Aizawa will review that at the start of class before delving into the next lesson. When Izuku comes up to his classroom for homeroom, ready to inform them of the plan, he's met with the familiar slouched figure of his crush. Tamaki is pressing his face on the wall, and Uraraka is standing next to him, confusion and concern evident on her face. Izuku catches her eye and points her to the classroom. She nods and enters, leaving Izuku to deal with the anxious third year. Tamaki, Izuku says as he stops next to him, why are you in front of my class again? Just because you're a third year doesn't mean you can't get expelled. The taller teen turns to Izuku and the greenet is quickly wrapped in a hug. The gate was gone and it would have been a perfect distraction for something bad to slip in and hurt you and dash. Izuku has to hold back a wince at the unknown truth to Tamaki's words, wrapping his arms around the teen and not being able to stop himself from leaning into the hug. Tamaki, I'm fine. There's no reason to panic. Izuku lets go and backs up. Now, go to class before you're tardy. It would be pretty lame if you got expelled for not being in class on time often. Tamaki hesitates for a second before leaving, and Izuku walks into his classroom. Ida is in the front, telling everyone else who is sitting in their seats to sit down. Izuku can't help the laughter that comes up and sputters out, Ida, you're the only one not in their seat. The rules-abiding student stiffens and straightens before quickly making his way to his seat and sitting down. Izuku makes his way to the podium, standing on it. He jumps up and moves ceiling tiles to pull out a few weapons, tossing them to Shinso before jumping down and holding out his hands in a gimme motion. The classroom, which was filled with chitter-chatter since homeroom has yet to begin, falls silent. Izuku quickly puts the weapons in their place and sits on the podium as the bell rings. Right? So today you'll be having other teachers giving you what should have been covered yesterday after lunch, and then it will be covered in those classes. Everyone understand? A chorus of yes, sense fills the room and Izuku nods. Great. Now, I'm sure you're wondering why I have several guns, knives, and a massive rifle strapped to my back now, right? Most of the class agrees and Izuku waits for a moment. After yesterday's events, we at Yude have decided that we need to take more precautions. Usually, I wouldn't want to have all my weapons on me, since this is all heavy and the rifle catches when I'm going through vents. However, since there's a possibility of villains attacking the school after yesterday's events, all teachers are required to have their weapons on them at all times. Some teachers will look the same, some will be different. I will be the most different since I usually just carry pencils. Are pencils really weapons, though? Kaminari asks. Izuku looks straight into the electrical user's eyes, seriously telling him, I have seen a quirkless kid kill someone with a pencil. It was me. I was watching a video. Kaminari's face goes pale as Shinso chuckles. Izuku's eyes shift to his student. Most of the class swear that their teacher's eyes soften a little at the purple net laughing before Izuku shakes his head and focuses back on what he needs to do. Right? Today we're going on a field trip after lunch to do rescue training. There will be me, All Might, and another teacher at the facility we're going to. Not true, but there's a slim chance that one of his students might be a traitor. Or they'll talk to other students during lunch. We'll be on campus, but a remote building, so we'll need to take buses. You'll change into your hero costumes after lunch and be at the buses by 1 o'clock, or you'll be left behind. Students chatter to each other excitedly before they silence themselves slowly as Izuku starts to write basic information for the lesson they missed the day before. Since we still have time, I'm going to go over a few things you would have learnt in my quirk theory class yesterday. As Izuku starts the lesson, he feels a little nervous having the gun on his back, other guns in his pockets, and the knives strapped to him. The last time he was fully decked out in weapons, he was still working under Shigaraki. Sure, he's had parts of his array on over the years, but when it comes to all 5 guns and 16 knives, it's been quite a while. Before he was caught by Aizawa, even. The quick quirk theory lesson ends and Izuku makes his way to his office. He's grateful that he doesn't teach anything other than the homeroom, quirk theory, and some heroics lessons. He can spend time working on his cameras to see who's left. He decides to start with Class 1A, since they were separated and it would be easy to write off an entire class, sans Ishido, and a few 1B kids. When he pulls up the camera feeds from the day before, he has a second monitor pull up the Class 1A and Class 1B roster. He marks off Ishido quickly as the video of the hallways Shinso identified for him starts up. He can hear the alarm going off in the video and his own voice. After a moment, he sees his students and pauses to check them all off. Ida and Shinso are in the lead, Uraraka, Azui, Yaoyorozu and Aoyama behind them. The sparkly student's eyes find the camera and wink, and Izuku chuckles for a second. Bakugo, Kirishima, Kaminari and Shiro are all together. Izuku thinks that Kirishima and Kaminari are talking about Ishido. Next to them is Hagakure, who seems to speak up before her floating clothes go away. Izuku marks that down and quickly marks off the rest of his students, as well as Tokage, Kodai, Rin, and Shota. He follows Hagakure after following the rest of his class, but when she reaches the hallway near the bathrooms, the video cuts out. This brings a wide array of questions that Izuku doesn't know the answers to, but he needs to share his findings with his dad. He connects a flash drive in his desk to his computer and copies the video from the hallway and everything that follows the invisible student. Izuku leaves his office, the videos in his pocket, and walks the short distance to his dad's office. He knocks and walks in, seeing his dad alone. Izuku, what brings you here? Nedzu asks, giving the green net his full attention. I was reviewing the video and one of my students was acting suspicious. It's possible she was the person with Shigaraki, but if she was, I doubt she wants to be. Nedzu perks up. Do explain. Izuku moves to the computer and connects the flash drive, pulling up the files he needs. Okay, so here's the class getting away. Kirishima and Kaminari seem to be talking about Ishido, since I think her and Kirishima were friends before they got here, and they're pretty friendly with Kaminari. Next to them, you can see Hagakure talk to them before she runs off. If we follow her, he switches to the other feeds. She's heading to the hallway that Shigaraki was in. My only issue with her being a willing traitor is that she knew Ishido was in the bathroom. She didn't even check or do anything against it. She's a smart enough girl. She would have checked the bathroom if it was going to harm her or her plans. But if she let Ishido go on purpose, it could be because she wanted us to be suspicious. Nedzu hums and thinks for a moment. I will add her to a list of people we should be suspicious of for sure. Make sure to keep an eye on her. Will do. Izuku leaves the flash drive and walks back to his office, checking the time. He has about an hour until his meeting with the Bakugas. He decides to send a pass over to his student for a few minutes before the meeting is scheduled, so that all of the Bakugas may be present. He sends the pass with a Gen Ed office aide student and settles to grade the quirk theory worksheet he gave on the first day. Time slips by and there's a knock on his office door. Come in, he calls out, shuffling the papers aside and smiles up as a group of people walk in. The first must be Bakuga's mother. Her son looks almost exactly like her. Slightly behind her is a meek man, slightly shorter, who doesn't look too much like his son. The youngest Bakuga walks in behind them. They all sit down and Izuku grins at them. Hello and welcome to you. Hi. Now, I'm sure that we all want to get to the main reason we're gathered here, but may I offer some tea? The Bakugo patriarch nods, and the matriarch shrugs. Sure. Izuku turns to his student who frowns. Fine, tea then talking. Izuku huffs but nods, quickly brewing 4 cups of tea and handing them out, offering sugar on a tray on his desk. I feel the best way to cover this would be to look at the photographs that were mentioned to me, to check for resemblance, and then if I determine that it is good enough, I can tell you all what I remember and we can decide where to go from there. Natsuki nods and pulls out a photo album from her purse. These are the last ones that were taken. Katsuki was about 4 or 5. Izuku nods and handles the album with delicate hands, opening it and seeing what appears to be a small Katsuki in an all-might onesie with a slightly smaller, green-headed child covered in freckles with glimmering viridian eyes. Both are holding up All Might action figurines, grinning wide. The next picture is of a woman with long, dark green hair, looking slightly annoyed as the green-haired child grins in front of her. Izuku feels that something at the look on the woman's face. An instinctual dread of sorts. That's not good. He taps the picture. Who is this woman? Mitsuki looks over. Ah, that's Midoriya Izuku. If you are the Izuku from Katsuki's childhood, she's your mother. Izuku nods and continues looking through the album. A man with black messy curls, brown eyes, and freckles all over his face is soon introduced as Midoriya Hisashi, Izuku's not-absent husband. Do you still talk to her? Izuku asks as he flips through a few more pictures. Occasionally she's very busy with her job as a nurse. She moved away a few years back too, so it's difficult to meet up for dinners. When Izuku finishes looking through, he nods to himself and hands it back. He thinks for a few moments. There were a few things that were familiar, particularly what would have been his mother's face. A few locations seemed familiar too, and he has vague memories of running around following someone who looks like Katsuki that surfaced more as he looked at pictures. There is a very high chance that I am the Izuku you all knew. However, that brings up issues that law enforcement will most likely need to address. Izuku laces his fingers together and rests his hands on them. I guess the best way to explain this would be for me to tell you all I can remember, other than small vague things that either came from those photographs or have always been there. I was about 4 when I was first on the streets. I think I was kicked out of my own home for being quirkless. There's an angry growl from Mitsuki, and her husband is quick to put a hand on her shoulder. Izuku continues, I was picked up from the streets by villains who realized my natural ability for analysis and wanted to use it for themselves. For the first year of being with them, I was chained up in a room with little sunlight and beaten or raped almost daily. I was taught how to use weapons, was told to analyze either heroes or villains to be taken down or strengthened. When I was 5, I started to take down heroes. Once every month I was let out of the room and sent to kill a target by the end of the week. The rest of my time was spent doing much the same as the first year I was there. Sometimes I would be chained up in different rooms, but I was never allowed to walk around freely. When I was 8, I was found by another teacher at this school and brought here to be adopted by the principal, Nedzu, and taken under the protection of UA. Since then, I've worked on recovery from my abuse and have completed enough schoolwork to have a few college degrees. On the day of the general admissions entrance exam, I was informed that I would be teaching class 1A this year, and that basically leads us up to now. Izuku manages to keep the memories at bay with a sip of tea, the warmth grounding him. The small family is staring at Izuku in various degrees of shock. Mitsuki looks a little angry in her shock, Mizura looking saddened, and Katsuki just staring at him. That is not horrible, Mitsuki says after a moment. Why might law enforcement get involved? Izuku hums, well, my dad has been trying to find whoever abandoned me for justice. After all, if I had not been forced onto the streets when I was a toddler, I wouldn't have gone through any of that. So, my dad wants to have justice served. First with the family that abandoned me, then with the villains that tortured me. Mitsuki nods slowly and bites at her lip. I can share Inko's contact information to make that easier, if you would like. Izuku grins. Yes, I would appreciate that very much. Izuku is happy when he notices the changes in his students' costumes. Yaoyorozu looks more comfortable in her pantsuit that has sections that can be opened using Velcro. Uraraka's costume is less form-fitting and the stupid heels that she had on have been replaced by white and pink combat boots. Todoroki still has ice covering most of his body, but there's supplies on a utility belt that wasn't there before. It's progress. Baby steps. While they're waiting for those with more intricate costumes, he searches for Hagakure. Can't believe that the girl is the traitor, not really. And if she is, he knows he will feel the sharp sting of betrayal. Sure, he went out of his way to help all of his students. But he gave Hagakure one of his sweatshirts. Plus there's the whole matter with the voice modulator, and unless she strashed one in the hallway that Shigaraki may have just been chilling in, there's no way she had that on her. The girl comes to him, thanking him for the change. There's actually a way for others to see her now if she wants. She shows it off, and various pastel lights turn on around her form. Izuku can't help the smile that comes on his face. She seems so happy, jumping around and coming up to Izuku, thanking him over and over. She's either an excellent actress, or there's more to the story in why she went down that hallway during the alarm. When Ida joins the class, he starts trying to get everyone to line up for a seating arrangement that won't work. But Izuku isn't one to ruin the fun. He gets on the bus last, making sure all of his students are there before sitting down and giving the driver the go-ahead. The drive's gonna last them about 10 minutes, so Izuku takes the time to edit some of his notes, add a few more things, and by the time they've arrived, he's content with the last few notes he needed on his class for the combative exercise they had gone through. "Alright class, we're here," Izuku says as he stands up. The chatter that Izuku had been ignoring silences as the students leave the bus behind their teacher. Izuku grins up at the large dome and the two teachers he can see inside. He asks Ida to lead the class indoors, and Yaoyorozu to help him check that no one left anything on the bus. The bus is cleared quickly and the two make their way inside. The students are still standing in awe at the massive building as Izuku walks over to 13 and one of Ectoplasm's clones. "Hey, do you guys know where All Might is? The idiot was supposed to come with us on the bus. He's in the teacher's lounge with your dad. He spent too much time patrolling this morning and needs to rest," Ectoplasm says, while 13 holds up 3 fingers, hiding their hand from the students. "That FNG incompetent BS 30, Izuku hisses under his breath. "Alright, whatever," Ectoplasm tell him that if something happens he better rush his butt here or I'm going to rip his jugular out with my bare teeth. The clone nods and 13 takes a moment before turning and addressing the students. As they do so, Izuku looks over the USJ. He really does love rescue training. The way that students save the dummies they have positioned around to act as victims has always been interesting. He wonders if Shinso will listen to his advice, or if Uraraka will be able to handle the flood zone, or what Azui will do in the fires. But those thoughts are all cut off when a familiar pinprick of black and purple swirls appears near the fountains. Izuku is quick to call out, "Ectoplasm, alert the school, we got villains. 13, get the class outside." Izuku quickly shifts his gun from his back and starts to shoot the villains coming in through the gate, stopping a few before they even fully cross. He aims for joins, knees mostly, and is suddenly thankful for the modifications made by Power Loader and his students. He can shoot over 500 rounds without needing to reload, and the magazines are already preloaded. If he runs out of bullets, he can reload in 3 seconds. The fact that somehow a first-year support student was able to manipulate space like this is insane, but he has a feeling that Hatsum may fits that bill. A somewhat familiar figure, though taller than when Izuku last saw him, is one of the last ones out. Along with a massive avian-esque figure, looming over the villain fodder that Izuku is effectively and efficiently taking out. Massive dark body covered in scars, sharp teeth and a long tongue hanging out of a beak, lifeless gaze and eyes embedded in the sides of a visible brain. This is a monster. The purple mist is gone after a moment, and Izuku can hear the shrieks of his class behind him as he works on taking out more of the fodder. Now that there's no more supply down there, it's easier. Especially with Ectoplasm's assistance. He's quick to jump into the battle below, creating a few more clones to help in taking down the villains that Izuku hasn't wounded already. Izuku takes a risk and turns around, only to see his class get taken away by the purple mist. He feels a rage build up in him that's taken down slightly when a few students are freed. He curses and runs over, quickly helping up a few students who fell and checking them over for injuries. Other pros are on their way. We have to wait maybe 15 minutes until they're all here, but I'm sure that there are others who are making mobility fast to come help. Shoji, the multi-armed student, looks over. Can you locate all of the other students? Are they still in the USJ? A mouth forms off of one of the tentacles of the boy. I'm locating them now. Shinso and Azui are together, I think, in the flood zone. Todoroki is talking to enemies with Hagakure in the landslide zone. I think I can hear Bakugo and Kirishima talking somewhere. I think the ruins zone. Kaminari, Yamamo, and Jiro are together in the mountain zone. I think I can hear Wajiro in the fire zone, and it's hard to tell who's in the windstorm zone, but I think it's Koda and Tokoyami. They're all fighting villains. Izuku quickly does a count in his head. What about Aoyama? Before Shoji can respond, there's a deep voice near them. I would say pleasant surprise, Izuku, however that would be a lie. The Green-it turns to the warping villain, Kurogiri. I'm betting I can't just ask you all to F off and leave my class alone, now can I? The Misty Man chuckles and Izuku grabs Uraraka. He quickly whispers a hastily formed plan to her before she nods and goes to the others. Shoji, keep me updated on what's happening to your classmates. And keep on trying to find Aoyama. He has to be around here somewhere. Izuku turns back to Kurogiri and sighs. You know, I'm actually a little grateful for you and your little league. Well, it's Shigaraki's. But is it really? I mean, his sensei is the one who gave it to him, and quite frankly that's not how you teach children. You don't just hand them what they want, they have to earn it and prove that they can do things on their own. Izuku shakes his head, teaching philosophies and ownership of this little group of mostly fodder aside. If it weren't for you I wouldn't have the people in my life I have now. So, I'm thankful. Izuku glares hard, staring into the yellow pits that make up the mist's eyes. But that ended the moment you endangered my students, Kurogiri. The plan comes into action then, Siro using his tape to grab the metal surrounding the solid body in the mass of mist, Uraraka hitting Ida and the speedy student rushing forwards to knock the villain down, keeping him in place as Siro adds more tape to keep Kurogiri down. There's a shriek from the plaza and Izuku turns to it shouting a quick, "Stay here," to his students before running to look over what's happening. He almost freezes when he sees Shigaraki heading for a familiar head of purple dripping with water. Izuku quickly shifts his gun and aims, trusting himself, before firing and hitting the crazy man-child in the elbows and hand. You stay the F away from my students with your crusty but hands, Shigaraki. Izuku screams, the rage that's been building up rising in his voice. Your fight is with me and All Might, so come effing fight. At that moment, there's a boom behind Izuku. He doesn't take his eyes off of Shigaraki as All Might steps forwards. Izuku doesn't face the number one hero, keeping his eyes on Shigaraki. The bullet for his hand hit his hand from the side, going in the space between his thumb and index finger. Shinso and Azui have already moved, back into the water but coming up a little bit away from Shigaraki, closer to Izuku. Izuku keeps an eye on Shigaraki, watching Shinso from his peripherals. His friend seems okay, shaken, but that's a given with the situation. Azui is a smart girl, she'll be able to work with Shinso and the two will definitely get out of this. Izuku-sensei, Kaminari has been taken hostage and heroes are almost here. Shoji calls out from behind Izuku. Great, go help hold down Kurogiri. If he gets into custody, the League will be fully captured here and now. Aizawa is part of the teachers coming yet? Izuku whispers, trusting his students' hearing. Yes, sensei. Have him use his quirk on Kurogiri and get quirk cancelers on him. Do not let anyone know until Aizawa is here. If Shoji can hear the heroes and who is there, they aren't that far off. He just needs to somehow get to the landslide zone while All Might occupies everyone. Luckily, the number one hero is useful for distractions. Izuku tears his gaze away from Shigaraki and finds Shinso, who is running to him. Izuku runs down the stairs and is quick to meet the purple net at the bottom. "Oh you're okay," Shinso says, hugging Izu before pulling back and grabbing the shorter teen's shoulders. "What do we need to do?" "Kaminari is being held hostage in the mountain zone," Izuku says quickly. "That's all the information they need. quickly running over. Izuku tells Azui to head up to the other students before he leaves, whispering to her to help hold down the mist man if possible. Kurogyri is strong. But Izuku has faith in his students. Getting to the landslide zone is easy. Finding the students is not. Izuku and Shinso work together fluidly, helping each other climb up and scouting. Eventually they find the 3 students. But this isn't right. There's no villains, just Jiro and Yaoyorozu over. Izuku rushes forwards to Kaminari. When Izuku runs forwards to Kaminari on the ground, Hitsuhei stands back and looks around. There's no blood anywhere, but that doesn't mean that his classmates aren't injured. Yaoyorozu is wearing a different shirt than before, and is holding a sheet of some sort out to Izuku as the greenet picks up Kaminari. Hitsuhei walks, observing the area. He feels his eyes widen when he sees someone he doesn't recognize holding something he does recognize. A gun. Being pointed at Izuku. Hitoshi doesn't have any weapons on him. But he knows where Izuku's are. Watch the young teacher put them on in class. In the blink of an eye, Hitoshi has moves forwards, grabbed a tranquilizer from one of Izuku's many pockets and shoots it at the man who was aiming to hurt Izuku. Aiming to hurt the person who Hitoshi needs in his life. And isn't that a weird thing? The purple net watches as the attacker, who had gone unnoticed by even Izuku, falls to the ground. Hitoshi needs Izuku. Izuku is the first person to believe in him. The first person to try. The first person to care. He needs Izuku, because without him Hitoshi has no one again. Good job, Shinso. Thank you, Izuku says, and Hitoshi looks down at his teacher. His friend, Izuku, who is pressing fingers to Kaminari's neck. Yeah, Hitoshi breathes out. He holds onto the tranq gun, watching out for anyone else who might be near. He catches Jiro's eyes, wide and full of tears. He's alive, but we need to get him to a hospital fast. Yaoyorozu, can you make something for us to carry him on? Izuku looks up to the girl as she nods, and the teacher turns to Jiro. Tell me what happened here. The girl looks back at Kaminari before Izuku snaps his fingers, and she looks back at him. She swallows. We were surrounded and used Kaminari to shock everyone. But he ended up frying his brain. We tried to keep him with us as we started to leave, but a villain came up and grabbed him. I tried to use my speakers, but he threatened Kaminari. He also has an electricity quirk and hit Kaminari with a really bad shock before dropping him and leaving. That's when you came up. So the person that Hitoshi hit was probably the guy who did this to Kaminari. The purple net nods at that. And looks around for anyone else as Yaoyorozu finishes making a stretcher to be carried. Izuku lays Kaminari on it and thinks for a moment before directing Hitoshi and Yaoyorozu to carry it, directing Jiro to use her quirk to help break a path down the mountain themselves. They walk in mostly silence, the only sound being the background noises of pro-heroes coming in and helping. Izuku doesn't even talk, just points at a path for Jiro to make before leading the group away. When Vlad King finds them, Izuku steps forwards. There's villains around here. One got hit by a tranq, the others got hit by electricity. The one hit by the tranq is near the end of this Jiro-made path, out of sight from the clearing. The others are further up. The one hit by the tranq has a gun, Hitoshi adds in. He doesn't mention how it was aimed at Izuku, or the terror that came up with the idea that Izuku could die or get hurt. He does let his eyes settle on Izuku. He knows that his friend isn't hurt, but there's a fear that lingers. There could be another villain they've missed that's about to take the shorter teen out. There could be a danger near that could kill Izuku. Take the person Hitoshi cares about the most away. Hitoshi blinks at that thought. It's not true, he cares about Izuku a lot. Cares about Izuku more than most people. Seeing Kaminari down bothered him, sure, but he knows that if it was Izuku, Hitoshi would have freaked out. The group continues going down, following the path that lead Vlad King up to them. There's paramedics waiting for them at the entrance to the zone, and they quickly take Kaminari away. Hitoshi moves to Izuku's side and hands the green net the tranq gun, watching as heroes go around and arrest various people. You're not hurt or anything, right? Hitoshi asks, looking at his friend from the corner of his eyes. No. Are you hurt? Hitoshi shrugs. I mean, I have a bit of a headache because I needed to control a bunch of villains in the flood zone, but not a massive one. The training's really paying off. Izuku hums and reaches into a pocket, pulling out some ibuprofen and handing a few to Hitoshi. I'm glad the training's helping you. This situation that we knew something like this was going to happen. I just didn't expect it so soon. I was planning on ramping it up really hard. Not that I'm not gonna do that, the sports festival is soon. And if I know my dad will be continuing on with that. Izuku has this sort of chaotic energy in his eyes that makes Hitoshi relax just slightly. His friend is acting normal. That's good for now. It might not last, but Hitoshi will be there for the fall. He'll be there to help pick Izuku back up. Because that's what Hitoshi wants to do. He wants to help Izuku. And he can't hide why from himself anymore. Shinso Hitoshi, a boy with no family and a handful of people that he cares about, has a big butt crush on the first person to tell him that he could be a hero. He can't ignore the flutters of his heart when Izuku looks at him. He can't push away the fact that he likes holding Izuku, whether it be to comfort him when dealing with bullshit, or the spying tactics they developed for him in the classroom. He can't hide his feelings from himself. He has a crush on Izuku. And Izuku has a crush on that shy third year who plants himself outside of their classroom. That much is obvious, running to go and help with an anxiety attack after just being told, hugging the taller teen every morning, the look in Izuku's eyes after talking to the elder. And several of those things point to the third year having similar feelings about Izuku. Standing outside his classroom due to a fear about Izuku being hurt? Being asked for to help with an anxiety attack? The protectiveness since someone, probably from 1B, made threats against Izuku? Hitoshi has a crush on Izuku. But Izuku has a crush on Amajiki, who has a crush on Izuku. Hitoshi is dragged out of his thoughts by a gentle touch to his shoulder. Hey, you okay? You just sorta zoned out there. Here, have some water to take the pills with. Izuku hands him a water bottle and Hitoshi nods, taking the medicine with a swig of water. Yeah, I was just thinking about some things, Hitoshi says. He looks around and sees that they have walked outside of the USJ. Police, paramedics, and heroes are rushing around them. Kaminari is in the back of an ambulance, awake and talking to a police officer. That's good. Hey, Kaminari is awake. Izuku's head turns so fast that Hitoshi can hear his neck crack. Hitoshi can see Izuku's eyes fly over the blonde, and he grabs Hitoshi's wrist to drag him a little closer, but far enough away so that the officer can finish taking Kaminari's statement. The greenet's hand is squeezing and releasing and squeezing his wrist, and Hitoshi doesn't. Think as he moves during one of the releases to hold onto Izuku's hand and squeeze back. He can't help but notice how perfectly their hands fit together, slender fingers fitting perfectly between slightly thicker ones. He stifles down anything that says fate inside of his head and just tries to focus on comforting his friend. Izuku leans on him, shaking slightly. Hitoshi frowns. Hey, he looks to be fine. No one else is in any of the other ambulances, so he's probably the most injured one, yeah? The police are here and they have those massive vans, probably to hold all the criminals they captured. I'm sure that if you ask that detective that was in the apartment the other day, he'll tell you that they got Shigaraki and are working on shipping him off to Tetris. And if somehow he doesn't get captured, at least you shot him in the hand. And elbows. Great aim, by the way. Izuku looks up at him, searching his face. Hitoshi watches as green eyes soften and feels Izuku's squeezes on his hands stop being so tight. Yeah, you're right. Shiro and Shoji were able to hold down Kurogiri, too, so there's probably no worry there. Especially if they got Aizawa to do what I wanted with him. I'll just have to make sure he's out of the picture too, and then they can start working on finding where Big Boss Man is. Izuku gives Hitoshi a gentle smile and the taller teen feels his heart melt just a little. Izuku-sensei. The two turn to see Kaminari waving at them. Izuku lets go of Hitoshi's hand and quickly makes his way over to talk with the blonde. The purple net decides to just hang back, sighing to himself and closing his eyes. His hand feels cold and like something is missing from it now, but that's fine. It's fine because Izuku's happier now. And Izuku deserves to be happy. And if Hitoshi has to be in pain for that? What at least he's used to it. After Kaminari tells him that apparently too much electricity makes him fall asleep, talking to the police, and making sure all of his students are physically okay, Izuku is exhausted. And that's not counting Aoyama being weirdly dramatic with not knowing where he went. It turns out that the half-French boy ended up passing out in a tree and woke up when All Might came in. On the bus ride back to the main campus, Izuku curls up in the back next to Shinso telling Ida and Yaoyorozu to make sure everyone is okay. He's curled up into Shinsu's side, the purple net's arm around him as he rests his head on the taller's chest. "Them you run warm. It's nice," Izuku mutters as he wraps an arm around Shinsu's stomach. "You should get some rest," Shinso says, running his fingers through Izuku's curls, gently untangling the green strands anytime his fingers hit a snag. "Can't sleep yet? Need to make sure everyone is passed to their parents. Uraraka needs to get driven to her apartment since she lives alone," Izuku says, yawning. "They fine. But once everyone is gone I am going to carry you to your room," Shinso says. Izuku nods, gripping Shinsu's top. "Also need to have the students change out of their costumes and get the support course to look over them," he mummers, stroking the soft fabric that makes up Shinsu's costume. "I'm sure Ida and Yaoyorozu have that covered." Shinso replies before speaking up, "Hey Ida, we need to get out of our costumes before anyone goes home. Oh, and Uraraka, a teacher will be driving you home to make sure you get there safe. I'm sure that Aizawa-sensei or one of his underground buddies will keep an eye on your apartment." "Yeah, Zawa's protective of students. That's why he expels lots. They don't have potential and could die easily. I think his friend in high school died or something and that's why he's so trigger-happy when it comes to that." Izuku mutters before he opens one eye and looks at the class to speak to the rest of them. "There will be heroes patrolling near your houses tonight. If not, I'll have cameras on and work with Shinso and my dad to make sure that everyone is safe. This is something new, and we don't want any of you targeted. They've been apprehended, but knowing the boss behind it all, they won't stay that way for too long. Long enough for Shigaraki to be taught a lesson, sure, but they're not going to make it to Tartarus. Latest they'll be taken back is on their way there. When that happens my dad's going to try to implement a dorm system. He'll most likely get approval, so be prepared to move soon." The bus stops as Izuku does and the teenager finds himself being picked up by his friend as he wraps arms and legs around Shinso. "Where do you want everyone to go after they've changed?" Shinso asks as he moves off the bus. Classroom. Go change, I'll be in there." Izuku pulls himself off of Shinso and makes his way to the 1A classroom. He looks up slowly as he walks around the corner to the hallway holding the classrooms and immediately regrets it. Next to the classroom is Mirio and Tamaki. Tamaki is pressed against the wall, his arms around Mirio's neck. Mirio has his hands on Tamaki's hips and Izuku watches as he slides one to the shy third year's backside. Their lips are locked together, and Tamaki lets out a soft Izuku backs up and around the corner, sliding down the wall as tears start to blur his vision. He thought Tamaki cared for him. He could swear that the third year harbored feelings for him. He was clearly wrong. His heart, it hurts. He grasps at his shirt over his chest. This is why they call it heartbreak. It feels like his heart is actually cracking, throbbing, hurting. He suddenly understands how someone can die from heartbreak. This pain, it's not just emotional. It's physical. With each beat of his heart it hurts. Tears run down his face in a steady stream as he muffles his cries with his fist. With each soft or grunt from the pair around the corner his heart hurts more. He's shaking as he bites down on his fist, trying to distract himself from the pain in his chest, but it's not enough. Teeth digging into his fingers is nothing compared to the sharp ache in his heart. He needs to get away, he needs to escape. He pushes himself up using the wall and stumbles away from the couple in the hallway making out. Soft ominous echo and Izuku bites down on his hand harder. Blood gushes in his mouth as the skin on his fingers break. It's not enough of a distraction from the pain that's getting worse. He runs into someone who grabs his shoulder. Hey Izuku, what's wrong?" He looks up and finds Shinso looking at him, concern etched on his face. Izuku takes his fingers out of his mouth and tries to say something, but all that comes out is an ugly sob. Shinso pulls him into a close hug and rocks them back and forth, holding Izuku close and delicately. Like he's something to be treasured. And it just makes Izuku sob harder as he grips on the back of Shinsu's school jacket. Because Tamaki held him like this just this morning and now he knows. He knows that Tamaki doesn't care for him. His dad was right. Izuku can't hold himself up, but Shinso just supports him. He can feel Shinso talking but can't hear anything. He feels Shinsu's arms move and pick up Izuku and the shorter one just clings, koaling on Shinsu's front. He shoves his face into the juncture of neck and shoulder and sobs. His heart thrums with each sound that leaves his throat. He feels betrayed and hurt and heartbroken. Because he thought that Tamaki cared. He thought Tamaki cared for him the same way he cares for the older teen. But he was wrong. And it hurts. It hurts so much to be so wrong with this. Because having the older teen be so protective over him got his hopes up. And now his hopes are burning to the ground. His heart feels like it's being stomped on now, different from the stabbing pain before. He must pass out at some point because when he wakes up, he's on the couch in the living room of his apartment. He's wrapped in Shinsu's arms, pressed against the taller's chest. His throat is sore, so are his eyes. His heart still hurts, but it's not as sharp. "Hey, how are you feeling?" Shinso asks him. "My heart hurts." Izuku's voice is hoarse and it hurts to talk. Shinsu's arms tighten around him and Izuku snuggles closer. He needs this, right now. Aizawa is getting you some ice cream and Yamada is making sure that everyone gets home safe. Your dad is ordering some katsudon from that takeout place you really like. Shinso shifts and Izuku looks to find a cup of water with a crazy-shaped straw. Izuku takes the straw and drinks until the cup is empty before curling up closer to Shinso. "What happened?" Izuku asks. "When you found me," he adds quickly. He knows why he was crying. The image of Tamaki and Mirio is imprinted on the back of his eyelids. You were crying really hard and had bitten down on your fingers so hard that you were bleeding really bad. You weren't responding to anything and Yaoyorozu came into the hallway. I told her to find a teacher to take over for you and then Amajiki came around the corner with Mirio. Izuku feels tears come up at the mention of the 2 third years. Shinso rubs his back and he slowly calms down, nodding for the purple net to continue. You cried harder when they came up and it was not pretty easy to connect the dots. I might have told them off some before coming up here. Your dad already knew what was happening, so he just made sure that a few agencies were told to have their sidekicks patrol the neighborhoods everyone lives in for the next few weeks. He told Aizawa to get some ice cream and went to go order food. Izuku nods and before his thoughts can go back to what he saw he asks, Can we do something? Or watch something? I need to keep my mind off of everything. Yeah, sure, here, let's sit up and I can show you that show on Netflix I was telling you about. The one where amateur bakers try and make really complex-looking things. That sound good? Izuku nods and lets himself be moved around. He finds himself clinging to Shinso, needing the touch. He needs to know he's not alone. They end up with the taller in the reclining seat on the couch with Izuku in his lap, head under Shinsu's. Slender yet muscular arms from training wrap around Izuku as the show plays. Hitoshi's an emotional mess. First off, he just figured out he has a big fat gay crush on his best friend teacher, the first person to tell him he can be a hero. Second, that crush has a crush on a third year he's clearly close to. Third, said third year was seen by the person who's basically in love with him making out with another third year. Yeah, there's a lot of emotions. A deep-rooted affection for the green net who is clearly trying to focus on nailed it but keeps drifting off into his mind. An aggression for Amikaji because he's the reason that Izuku sobbed into Hitoshi until he passed out. Protectiveness that makes itself known by the way that his arms wrap around Izuku's waist and hold him tight. An ache in his heart to see the one he cares for most hurt. Fury at the villains that had attacked them earlier in the day because those are the people who tortured Izuku and threatened his class. Relief over the fact that no one was seriously hurt. Yeah, quite the emotional cocktail. And he can't decide which emotion to focus on more, so he just pushes most of them away to watch the show. But the heartache and affection come through with every slight shift Izuku makes, the slight chuckles that comes out when he focuses on the show. Hitoshi hates that Izuku is hurting too much to not let out the laughter that sounds like music. He just wants to wrap Izuku up in a few blankets and make sure he doesn't leave the couch for the next few days. But they have school tomorrow. And Hitoshi needs to plan on how to deal with that. Usually it's Izuku making plans, but Hitoshi glances at Izuku's face and can't find himself to ask about what they should do. So, he lets himself plan. Amajiki might come to the classroom in the morning, so maybe they should have Izuku come in using vents or early. Maybe Hitoshi can punch the guy. He kinda wants to punch the guy. Because Amajiki hurt Izuku. Really hurt him. So maybe Hitoshi wants him to feel some sort of pain. Next comes the class. 1A will wonder why Izuku wasn't there to talk to them in the classroom, unless Yaoyorozu said something. Izuku should be the one to make the decision of what to say, but Hitoshi needs to know how to react to each possible situation. If Izuku tells them why, he'll wait until there's no teachers, or Ida, around and tell them who hurt Izuku. If Izuku ignores it, he'll say that Izuku didn't react too well to the USJ after a while, not quite a lie but more of a misdirection. And if Izuku lies, Hitoshi will go along with the lie. He'll back up Izuku in this and anything else they come up with for dealing with this. Hitoshi shoves another spoonful of ice cream in his mouth as a person on the show ignores the standing mixer until a judge points it out. Izuku chuckles with him at the, "Oh yeah, there's a whole stand mixer." Hitoshi smiles and looks down at Izuku, feeling a little better. Maybe he can help Izuku get over Amajiki. Maybe he can get Izuku to return his feelings. That would be nice. Plus, it would be better for Izuku. Because Hitoshi respects Izuku. Hitoshi cares about Izuku. Hitoshi thinks the world of Izuku. And isn't that what people are always talking about wanting? Someone who cares truly and deeply, someone who would do anything to make them smile, someone who just wants to help them be happy and will do everything in their power? So, maybe he needs another plan. Hitoshi thinks as another contestant on the show starts to have a purple burstometer because he keeps on saying bursting when referring to food. A plan to get Izuku over the shitty third year and show the green net that Hitoshi can treat him like a king. Help him heal with affection. But how do people get others to like them? Well, Hitoshi reasons as the only female contestant slaps her cookie dough and refers to it as her husband. Maybe Hitoshi needs to figure out how he started crushing on Izuku. He just figured out his feelings today, but it all started when Izuku believed in him. Supported him. So, Hitoshi needs to support Izuku. And he already does that. Great, next thing. Izuku's there for Hitoshi when he needs it, constantly telling him that he did good and talking about how great Hitoshi is. So compliments? He can do that. And being there for Izuku. Well, he does his best with that. But that's not it, that's just friendship. What pushes platonic feelings to something more romantic? Hitoshi looks to Izuku as he ponders the question. Maybe it's because he trusts Izuku. Trusts him so much that he followed him into a situation with death as a possible outcome without a second thought. Maybe it's because he didn't really care what gun he grabbed to take out the guy who was about to kill Izuku. Because he needed to protect the green-it. Maybe it's the attraction that Hitoshi feels. Like he's just a small planet and Izuku is a brilliant, beautiful star. With sunshine smiles and the ability to make Hitoshi feel warm, the metaphor isn't too far off. Hitoshi is just drawn to Izuku. Like there's some sort of thread connecting the two. The first challenge in the show ends with Izuku screaming, "I knew it!" As the man who didn't, to use the stand mixer, called fish, wins. Shinso chuckles to himself at the sight of Izuku acting semi-normally. The next challenge is revealed, something to do with Moby D, as Shinso just decides to relax in the moment. There's no more ice cream to shove in his mouth, but he is a little uncomfortable. He's still in his uniform after all, and since Izuku seems to be doing a little better, he moves to whisper in the shorter's ear. "Hey, I need to go change out of my uniform. I'll be back in a minute, do you need anything?" It may just be due to the TV, but Hitoshi swears that Izuku's face turns a little pink as he requests a can of Diet Coke as he moves to sit next to Hitoshi instead of on top of the taller teen. Hitoshi is quick to change into a pair of black flannel pants and a black crop top that Izuku got him because crop tops are a fashion statement and clothing has no gender. He moves out of his room and goes behind the couch, ruffling Izuku's hair before walking into the kitchen. Nedzu is sat at the barely used dining table with Aizawa and Yamada, several laptops and screens in front of them. "Ah, Shinso, how's Izuku holding up?" Nedzu asks quietly. Hitoshi hums as he opens the massive fridge and pulls out a couple of cans of soda. Watching Netflix is helping distract him, I think. Every once in a while he'll just stare off, but it's easy to bring him back. We did finish the ice cream, though. Hitoshi moves to the pantry after closing the fridge and grabs a bag of Lay's barbecue chips and a can of sour cream and onion Pringles. He might get a little mad about eating all this junk food, but I can just tell him that cheat days are okay and I think that will work. The teenager turns to look at the three others. Is everything okay with the class? Nedzu hums. Unfortunately, Uraraka lives in a rather cheap neighborhood, so there's more activity near her, but nothing we can connect with them. His voice is a downright growl as he refers to the people that first off tortured his adopted son and second off attacked his school. We might be able to push the dorms easier with this information, along with the fact that a few of the other students live extremely far away. Kaminari just got home. Luckily he was able to stick to areas where we could see him, but it's still a concern. Hitoshi frowns at the fact that the blonde just got home. The electricity user's father had come by the school from his job about 3 hours ago. Maybe there's a reason why his homework is always incomplete. I sure hope that the dorms get in place, just for their sakes. The purple net says before turning around to go back into the living room. If either of us fall asleep and you wake us, I will kill you. I know where all of you sleep, he calls out as he enters the dimmer living room once more. One diet soda for you, some chips to munch on because watching this show makes me hungry, and one Shinso Hitoshi that you can cuddle with, the teenager says as he sits back down, putting the chips and sodas on a side table before opening his arms up. Izuku settles back down into Hitoshi's lap. The shorter teen must have changed when Hitoshi was gone at some point because instead of an oversized hoodie and shorts, he's in a pair of bright pink sweatpants and a long-sleeve shirt. Izuku cracks open his can of soda and sips it and puts it down on a lime green coaster. He shifts around before grabbing Hitoshi's arms and wrapping them around himself. The burstometer fills a little more and Izuku leans back and turns to whisper into Hitoshi's ear, "Thanks for everything. I'd feel safer with you around." Hitoshi immediately hears dial-up tones and blue screens managing to get out a strained, "Of course, I'm happy to help," before opening his own can of soda and taking a sip. He tries to focus on the show, but his mind is filled with the way that Izuku's lips grazed the side of his face as he spoken and those words. They make his heart beat erratically and his stomach flip and tie in knots. Hitoshi knows that Izuku has a rather unsavory past. He's heard Izuku talk about it when telling All Might off, and has helped with an occasional nightmare when he's awake and Izuku's screams make him run to the shoulders. He's been ranted to and has heard about things that he doesn't want to imagine happening to the sweet boy in his lap. So the fact that he trusts Hitoshi enough to feel safe, let down his guard, and tells him that, it really means a lot. All thoughts of trying to get Izuku to fall for him are out the door. Because what he really wants is the trust Izuku has in him to stay. Chapter text. There's not an easy way to come into a classroom and tell the students that you didn't see them after a traumatic event because you got your heart broken. There's also a chance that Amajiki will be waiting outside the door again, and that brings on a wave of hurt and anxiety. Lucky for Izuku, Shinso has a plan. I figured that you wouldn't be able to think anything up last night, so I may have made various plans based on what you want to do. They're probably not as good as your plans are usually, but there's something, the purpled-haired boy says, scratching the back of his neck over breakfast. Together they work out an idea of what to do with everything. And that's how Izuku finds himself curled up in one of Aizawa's spare sleeping bags. It engulfs him completely, making him feel safe in a sort of wearing your father's jacket in the winter way that Izuku's never really felt before. Sure, Aizawa isn't his dad, but he's something like a close uncle, a father figure in a sense. Students are filing in as it gets closer and closer to the start of the day. There's a painfully familiar voice outside that makes Izuku want to curl up in a ball and be held by Shinso until he dies. Have his friend's long body and arms around him again. He felt safe like that, like as long as Shinso is there, he's okay. Nothing can harm him, will attempt to harm him, when he's in Shinso's arms. That's not weird, he's never felt like this before with people. He's only really had his dad, and well, Nedzu is an animal. Izuku shakes his head, he can contemplate what that means in his own time. Right now he needs to prepare himself for apologizing to the class. Oh, and informing them about the sports festival. And the dorms. That should cover everything that's happening now. The bell rings and Izuku waits a second before getting up from the corner and stretching, yawning as he walks to the podium, using his rifle as a cane to lean on. Alright class, settle down, we have a few things to cover today. Izuku begins, only to be cut off by the door slamming open. He jumps up and turns to see Amajiki looking at him from the doorway. Izuku freezes and can barely hear the scrape of a chair before purple floods his vision. Aren't you supposed to be in class? Shinso asks, reaching a hand back to have Izuku grasp onto. The greenet quickly does so, closing his eyes and putting his head in his friend's back. I needed to check with Iza. No you don't. You need to get to class. Shinso gives Izuku's hand a squeeze, and Izuku squeezes back, accepting the comfort being provided. I just need to see him and then I'll go. Amajiki says, a pleading tone in his voice. Midoriya doesn't want to see you and is fine, Shinso says. His hand slips out of Izuku's grasp as the tall purple net starts to step forward. Each one of Shinso's footfalls is echoed by one of Amajiki's as he is pushed back to the door from Shinso's presence. I've been with him since the fight. He didn't even work last night. Nedzu and Aizawa took care of it. We just watched Netflix and ate some junk food before falling asleep on the couch. A few students in the class, Ida, gasp and try to get Shinso to apologize for dropping honorifics for 3 teachers. A few other students, Ashido, Uraraka, and Hagakure, all look to each other at how Shinso mentions falling asleep on the couch with their teacher. The third year stares down Shinso before frowning. I just want to check on him, he is my fave . Before the older teen can finish the sentence, Shinso has thrown a punch that hits Amajiki, making his face turn with the impact. He doesn't want to see you. Leave. Shinso stands there and stares as Amajiki holds his cheek and leaves before turning to Izuku and quickly wrapping the shorter teen in a hug. Izuku wraps his arms around his friend and accepts the comfort for a moment before pulling away and shaking himself a little. Izuku goes back to the podium and Shinso goes back to his seat. Anyways, Izuku begins, ignoring Ida's raised hand. That entire situation is why I was not present here when you all returned from changing. Shinso was with me at the time, don't worry about it. There will be no asking of what that was all about, are we clear? There's a chorus of, yes, sensei, and Izuku nods. Right now, on to other things. Since the security systems we have in place were able to work, and no one was seriously injured, the school is going to have the sports festival in a few weeks. There will be permission slips you will need to be signed by a parent or guardian. You'll receive them sometime this week. You will need to have them returned to me no later than 10 p.m. the night before. If you do not get them back to me, you will not be able to participate and will be removed from the class and transferred to general education. Even those of you who wish to go underground. That option will become available in your second year. Izuku sees a few hands raise as he pauses and he nods to Uraraka. Sensei, what about getting my parents' T-sign? I could mail it or visit but... She shrugs and Izuku shakes his head. Don't worry, staff will be visiting everyone's homes soon. I'll talk about that in a moment, but we will have your parents sign it then. Izuku smiles and looks to Kaminari, calling on the student. Why does the not participating if going underground thing start next year? Izuku blinks at the fact that Kaminari is asking this, instead of someone like Hagakure, but answers, UA gives students a year to have a closer looks at what various types of heroics are really like before having you decide what type of hero you wish to be. Kaminari and a few others look a little confused, so Izuku explains more. Okay, let's use an example. Say that Todoroki wants to be a hero like his father. Izuku looks at the student in question who frowns at him. Izuku shakes his head slightly before continuing, but he finds out that he really enjoys mountain and winter rescue over the course of his first year. If we have you guys select what type of heroes you want to be right now, a majority of you would stick to a type of hero you see constantly or have quirks similar to your own. But if we give you a year to see more sides of heroism and what they can entail, you guys will branch out and we won't have a deficiency in certain types of heroes. Todoroki stopped his frowning the moment Izuku said rescue, and has been staring at his hands ever since. Izuku thinks the boy might need to be shown more than just the capturing villain's side of heroism. After making sure there are no more questions, Izuku is ready to tell the class about the next topic on the agenda today. Right now onto something else. Since the attack happened, we are going to be providing counseling sessions. You all will have to go there once a week over the next 4 weeks. If you don't, we will suspend you from heroics classes and deal other punishments that seem fit. This does not make you weak. Many heroes seek out therapy. At the end of the day, we're all human, and humans develop mental illnesses under stress. And heroism is stressful. Izuku doesn't passe as he switches topics this time, knowing that present Mike will cover that aspect more later today instead of giving them a study hall. The loud blonde is much more well-suited to talk about therapy from a heroic standpoint. Izuku's therapy mostly consists of dealing with the fact he almost died nearly daily as a child. Alright, we have one more announcement and this one is big, so everyone pay attention. Izuku looks across the class and sees each student looking at him. Since there were no major injuries to anyone due to the security systems we have in UA and there might be villains who are encouraged to kidnap UA students after yesterday, the school board has decided to implement dorms. With the help of a few heroes on staff and hired to help, the dorms will be done by the end of next week. When that happens, staff will be visiting each student's home to discuss with your parents everything involved with that. I will be going to each one of your guys' homes with my dad, and probably Shinso since he already lives on campus. So that if you haven't told your parents about the fact that some of you are months or weeks older than your teacher, might want to say something. Kirishima raises his hand quickly and Izuku blinks before calling on him. When's your birthday, Izubro-sensei? Izuku snorts at the name and eagerness of his student. July 15, 2257. Ah man, Kirishima grumbles to himself. Izuku snorts and shakes his head. Do whatever you want for the rest of class. I need to go find the manned MS in the vents. There's caramel and fudge brownie and they have my name on them. Izuku launches himself up into the vent, leaning down and out to look at Shinso. Come on, it's vent training time. Izuku says, reaching down for his friend. Shinso shrugs and reaches up to be pulled into the vents. Teacher and student quickly retreat, ignoring the yelling of Ida along with the giggling of some girls, and a curious gaze on the vent they left open. Izuku straightens out his suit jacket in the mirror of the bathroom, sighing to himself as he moves to try and tame his curls. It's pointless, but at least he can say he tried. Going into his room from the en-suite bathroom, Izuku grins at the boxes full of things for a cat, ready to head to the dorms. Today he will be going to meet his students' parents before coming home to give Shinso a therapy cat in the dorms. He can't help but feel excited for the introduction. Shinso had picked the cat, he just didn't know that she was almost finished with training. Izuku shakes himself out of his thoughts and leaves for the living room. His dad is waiting in a chair while Shinso slips on his shoes. The purple net is wearing a simple white button-up with gray slacks, his hair as wild as ever. Izuku quickly slips on a pair of dress shoes as he asks, so we're going to be visiting Bakugo, Todoroki, Ida, Kirishima, Azui, Yaoyorozu, Joda, Kaminari, and Uraraka today, correct? That's right. And I made sure to grab the papers we will need for Uraraka's parents to sign and put it in the file for her. Nedzu replies, tapping the briefcase next to him. The two teenagers finish putting on their shoes, and Izuku grabs the briefcase while his dad climbs up to rest on Izuku's shoulders. They head out, going to a car driven by a sidekick for present Mix Agency. All three sit in the back, Shinso behind the driver, Izuku on the other side with his dad in his lap. The briefcase rests between the two teenagers. Izuku pulls out his phone to play a new game of Balloon Tower Defense, wondering if he could get a cup of coffee somewhere. The house they pull up to first is a modern-looking home. There's a little artsy element to it, but Izuku finds it to be nice to look at. The sidekick stays in the car as the three in the back leave, walking up to the door. Izuku rings the doorbell and stands slightly behind his dad, holding the briefcase to his side. There's muted yelling from inside, and the door opens to Mitsuki smiling at them all. Please come in, she says with a smile. The three guests enter, slip on guest slippers, and make their way to the living room. There's a few chairs facing a couch. Katsuki is already sitting in a chair, wearing a black t-shirt with a skull along with a pair of jeans. Nedzu moves to sit in the middle of the couch. Izuku and Shinso move to sit on either side of the chimera. Izuku sets the briefcase on the low table and opens it, pulling out a file with Katsuki's name on it. Izuku closes the briefcase after pulling out a few pens, and sits back as Mitsuki and Mizura enter. The Bakugo matriarch is holding a tray with coffee, tea, and water. She places it down close to Shinso, who quickly makes 2 cups of coffee, a black one going to Izuku while the purple net adds several spoonfuls of sugar before taking his first sip. I feel that a proper introduction for myself and Shinso is appropriate before we begin. My name is Nedzu, and I am the principal of U.High. This is Shinso Hitoshi, a student in Bakukuin's class and a ward of the school. He also acts as Izuku's personal student. Shinso waves his hand and drinks more of the coffee before saying, "Pleasure. I'm Bakugo Mitsuki and this is my husband, Bakugo Mizura." Mitsuki says with a smile, gesturing to the quiet man next to her. He nods his head and gives a soft smile. Now, why don't we get down into this? Nedzu makes a cup of tea for himself as he begins to talk. We're here today to talk to you about the change of U.High to a boarding school. After the attack on the USJ last week, all of us at U.High feel that students would be safe from things like copycat villains who will attack them solely because they are students. Nedzu takes a sip of his tea and Izuku can tell that his dad approves of the tea by a slight wag of his tail. It should be stated that the students won't be alone in the dorms. Some teachers are willing to move into apartments in the dorms. I'm not exactly an adult, but I am a hero. There is also a security system that has been upgraded since the USJ to prevent the type of quirk that allowed villains to enter the school without a chip that will be given to students and staff with similar quirks. Izuku adds in before taking a drink of his own coffee. Who else will be in the dorm other than students? Mitsuki asks, pouring herself some water. In the 1A dorms there will be Izuku, myself, and the school counselor and pro-hero Hound Dog. Other dorms will include the class's homeroom teacher and 1 other staff member. Nedzu answers smoothly. Mitsuki and Nedzu go back and forth on questions and answers before Mitsuki moves to asking Shinso a few things. Do you know Hound Dog? Yeah, he's really nice. Very protective over students and Izuku-sensei. How comfortable do you feel with him? Very. He has training in being a therapy dog and also brings in therapy animals for those who need them. Shinso smiles softly and Izuku has to bite back a grin. He can't wait until his friend comes home to a cat. The Bakugas soon agree to keep Katsuki enrolled as UA becomes a boarding school. The 3 guests say polite goodbyes, Katsuki staying silent to the side as they leave. Izuku takes a look at the house as they leave, and finds himself vaguely aware of how the tree he sees in the backyard had the juiciest cherries. So those were the people who knew Kidyu? Shinso asks Izuku as they sit in the car. Yeah, I don't really remember it but I vaguely knew the house. Like, that house could have been something I saw over my cameras in how I knew it. Some areas I kinda know and the rest is a mystery. Izuku shrugs, it's not like it matters that much to me. Shinso hums and Nedzu pats Izuku's face. Let's not think about that. Now, Izuku, I know you have your theories on Endeavor. If you think that we can get evidence from Todoroki-kun today, I have papers to take him into custody with the Concerned Heroes Act. Since it's your theories, you are the hero that will be responsible for Todoroki-kun and if we get no evidence, it will be on you. Izuku nods and takes a deep breath. That's right. He can possibly take Todoroki out of his home and into somewhere safer. I just want him to be safe. Izuku delves into his thoughts, wondering how he can get the bichromatic teen to expose his father. If Todoroki even trusts him enough. Hopefully. Izuku is pulled out of his thoughts when the car stops outside of a large wooden gate. He exits with his father and student, the chimera settling to sit on Shinsu's shoulder this time, letting Izuku hold the briefcase. Izuku rings the doorbell next to the gate. A woman's voice quickly comes through a speaker above the bell. Hello? Is this Shudo's teacher and principal? Along with another student? Yes. Izuku answers smoothly. Great, I'll open the gate up and meet you at the door. Izuku hums in confirmation before she pops his neck and shakes his arms out. The gate opens and Izuku enters, feeling himself slide into a different role. a role that picks up more on details. What kept him alive for years as a child? What helps keep his fellow heroes alive when they're on the field? Izuku is no longer the weird teacher or son of the principal. Izuku is a hero, trained to kill before he thought of PBR, analyzing everything before then. And he is here to find evidence for something he's suspected for over half his life. The woman they meet at the door is just a little older than Shinso and Izuku. She has snow-white hair with red highlights, gray eyes behind red cat eyeglasses. Shudo is just behind her, slightly favoring his left leg. Izuku looks at his student with sharp eyes to try and find anything else. Bruised knuckles, bruises he can barely see under the sleeves and neck of the black turtleneck the heterochromatic teen is wearing. Hello, let me introduce all of us. Nedzu hears. Am I a rat, a bear, or a mouse? It doesn't matter because I am the principal of U.High. Nedzu taps the top of Izuku's head from his position on Shinsu's shoulder. This is my son, Izuku. He is Todoroki-kun's teacher. And this, Nedzu taps Shinsu's face, is his personal student and U.A's ward, Shinso Hitoshi. He's also a member of 1A. Ah, well, I'm Todoroki Fuyumi, Shudo's older sister. Unfortunately, father was called out to a mission not even an hour ago. Izuku notches how she looks back at Shudo, her eyes lingering on his leg. How unfortunate. Are you legally able to sign off on things for Todoroki-kun? Nedzu asks. Fuyumi hesitantly nods and Nedzu hums. Please, come in, would you like any tea or perhaps coffee? Fuyumi says, stepping aside to let the three in. Coffee, please, Izuku and Shinso say together. They quickly switch to guest slippers laid out for them by the young woman as she nods. Shudo, can you please show our guests to the sitting room? Shudo nods and leads the three into a rather large room. Two sofas face each other near a fireplace, a table between the tables. The traditional setting makes Izuku feel slightly uncomfortable, used to the sleek institutionalized environment of the school. He pays attention to the imp his student has, and has already made up his decision. But, just to make sure, he asks a question. Todoroki, what was your father doing before he left? Izuku asks calmly, a small fake smile on his face. The boy looks at him for a few solid seconds, holding his stare before replying, he was beating me in the guise of training and I would like to not be here. Izuku blinks and looks to his friend and dad, who both look at him with wide eyes. Well, I was already going to get you out today, but this just makes it easier, I suppose. Izuku says, sitting down open the suitcase and pull out the appropriate paperwork. He quickly begins to fill it out, asking for his student to sign a few things and asks for his dad to act as witness. By the time that Fuyumi has come in, they just need to turn the paperwork in. Shudo looks up to his sister before just saying, I'm out. It takes a moment for the woman to process and understand what her little brother has said before she drops the tray and holds up her hands to her face, quickly running over, ignoring the hot liquid and broken ceramic on the floor. She hesitates, almost reaching out to her youngest brother before stopping and holding herself back. She squeezes her hands into fists near her collarbone and nods. I'll go visit Natsu for a little while until I find my own place, okay? We can do what Tatsuya wanted. A few tears slip out and she nods before turning to the school representatives in the house. Please, if you need someone to come forth as a witness for any trials, my phone number is listed in his files and I can get my brother to do it too. She looks down and shakes her head. No, I can't stand here and make excuses for everything. Father killed Tuya and there's nothing saying he won't do the same to Shudo, and we never spoke up because we weren't the ones he paid attention to, so it Izuku inwardly sighs and places a gentle hand on Fuyumi's shoulder. You are being neglected. That's still abuse. Don't blame yourself when you are also a victim. Blame your father. It's not your fault. The words Izuku speaks almost send him back to a time when he was less stable, but he pushed it down. He is acting as a hero right now. He's the next principal of U.High. Trained by the one who has overseen the education of heroes for decades. Has several college degrees at the age most enter high school. He's not the ex-assassin who was used and abused. He can help others who feel guilt for their abuse. Right? Well, miss, it would be wonderful if you were to sign this paper for my son to officially remove your brother from your father's care and instead be moved to be overseen by Yude and its associates. Nedzu jumps from Shinsu's shoulder and grabs the papers from where Izuku had left them. The papers are quickly filled out, and a bag of things Shudo wishes to keep is grabbed. Izuku doesn't pry while his student grabs his belongings, instead grabbing Shinso and pulling the purple net around to watch Izuku investigate. He starts to peer into rooms before backing out, looking for an office. Thanks to Todoroki's confession, I can say that as a concerned hero I wanted to search the home. And since he confirmed my suspicions of abuse, and we can use his testimony combined with Detective Tsukachi to provide evidence for that. But we need solid evidence for everything else. Okay, what are we looking for? Shinsu asks, keeping up with Izuku. Papers regarding Todoroki's parents' wedding. Or something from his mother's family. Her maiden name is Hanayuki. Receipts or something. Hanayuki Rei was bought and forced into a quirk marriage. Izuku peers into a room and stops. A massive desk, filing cabinets, and a computer. Inag, Izuku says, slipping in. He's quick to go to the computer, sliding a flash drive from his pocket into the USB port, grinning as he starts to enter the computer and pull any files that have his wife's name, maiden or otherwise, onto the drive. He can hear Shinso picking locks and shuffling through files. Izuku mutters to himself as he looms over names of various files across the computer. Izuku doesn't hesitate on taking any information Endeavor has on villains either. The man isn't good at communication, and probably has information on villains that the Hero Commissions doesn't even know about. And they have spies in villain organizations. I found a folder just labeled Rei. Should we take it? Shinso asks as Izuku finishes looking through the moderate amount of files on the computer. Probably we should head out now. I think Dad might just send us back to you today and have us set up in the dorms since we now have Todoroki and he needs to get moved in. Izuku gets up, grabbing the flash drive and wonders if the kitten will be ready yet. They leave for the car, where Nedzu and Todoroki are waiting. Todoroki sits in the front passenger seat, while Izuku and Shinso sit in the back seat, Nedzu sitting in Izuku's lap. Did you get what you need? Nedzu asks, eyeing the folder in Shinsu's hand. Yes. Shinso has the only papers, everything else I got from his computer. Let me guess, we're going to go get started in the dorms and you're going to take 13 and Cementos to the rest of my class, since 13 was also a ward and Cementos knows me more than any other available staff member. Excellent work, Izuku. Though, I will have to say, I think bringing Hound Dog instead of Cementos would be more effective at guaranteeing the safety of the students, since he will be living in the same building. But isn't Hound Dog still busy with something this morning? Izuku asks, wondering what his father is saying. Ah, yes, but that finished early. He'll be waiting for us at the dorms. I was able to have some staff members move your items, Izuku. Same for you, Shinso. Shinso looks at the chimera, confused, but we were going to be gone all day? Izuku hums, not really. Even if Todoroki hadn't confessed, this would be how it would have ended up anyways. It's just easier now, since 2 heroes and a hero student were there to see the confession. People who know me know I don't like Endeavor. If I was the only one confessed to, there would be issues. But, since you and Dad are both witnesses, T's more believable. Even if you two are close to me, you both have your own morals. Dad would never let anyone abused live in that situation, and doesn't lie when it comes to abuse cases. You're not the biggest fan of lying, and probably wouldn't do something like this, no matter who it's for. Izuku can feel everyone looking at him as he looks down at his phone. Wonderful analysis, Izuku. There are a few points that can be contested if one knows certain things. Nedzu looks to Shinso for a second, knowing his son won't notice as long as he doesn't stare. However, with your knowledge and abilities, I do believe you have come to the correct conclusion on the best course of actions. Todoroki hums from the front seat, as if he understands what Nedzu is implying. Izuku furrows his brow as he looks up from his phone to his dad, who is once more looking straight forwards. What am I missing then? Nothing too important for now. Though I do expect you to figure it out soon enough. Izuku blinks and sigh. I thought we were done with the mind games after we made Yamada so scared Aizawa couldn't get him to sleep for a week. Done with mind games involving staff? Yes. But there is no staff involved in this, Izuku. You guys are doing it again, Shinso interrupts. No super analysis stuff unless there's something that can record Izuku's muttering and T for Nedzu to hold so he doesn't plan the destruction of humanity. Also, it's too early for this. How are you able to think this early? Who said I slept last night? Izuku says automatically before freezing up as he realizes who he just told that to. Izuku? Shinso asks, voice serious. I didn't mean to, but when I was about to finish off, I saw someone getting kidnapped and so I had to help with that, but the hero I was working with ended up getting left behind, so I was trying to find someone else to help, and then I found where that massive trafficking ring in Tokyo was, so I had to help with that, and they were setting up a sale that night, so I had to get some heroes involved and help. Izuku rushes out. He doesn't want to face the wrath of Shinso because he can't take care of himself if someone is in danger. Show me the paperwork for it later and we'll see. Shinso says before turning to look out the window. I can do that. Filled it out last night as the case was happening. You can get set up and look over it. I did not stay up all night watching an anime to then cry over it this time. Izuku assures, nervous that he'll still somehow F up and be deprived of cuddles. For some reason, they calm him down more than anything else. Shinso's presence alone makes his days just a little better, and being able to watch Netflix together on a couch is something he treasures. They pull up to Heights Alliance, where 13 and Hound Dog are standing outside. Izuku bites down a wide grin and instead just calmly waits for his dad to leave his lap before leaving the car. Izuku, Shinso, Todoroki, and Hound Dog all move to enter the building. I'll take the suitcase when you get the paperwork you need for Todoroki-kun, Izuku. Oh, and it's waiting in your unit. Hound Dog says as he unlocks the building and tosses the keys to Izuku. Izuku nods and the four enter the dorms for the first time. The teenagers slips off their shoes and Izuku grins at the slippers already available, red ones for him, Shinsu's usual dark purple ones, and a pair of white ones that have little designs based around his quirk. Izuku moves to the common living room and quickly removes the papers he needs from the suitcase. There we go, please don't hurt anyone today. Izuku says as he passes the suitcase over. The school counselor nods before leaving. Izuku grins wide, right? Well, Todoroki, you can choose any room you want in the male side. I'll just make the arrangements around you. Shinso, your room is in my apartment so that curfew bots don't get alerted when we're doing our weekend lessons. Izuku heads to his unit and opens it to see the cat tree he had ordered set up, with a black cat on top. He opens her forest eyes and looks to the two humans who had just entered. Izuku looks to Shinso, whose face goes from blank to confused to surprised to excited as he looks at the kitten. Isn't that the therapy cat I picked out? Sure is. Izuku says as he closes the door and watches the happiness on Shinsu's face. It's so nice to make his friend feel this way. Izuku's heart feels warm as Shinso moves forward slowly, stretching out his hand from the cat as he approaches her. Izuku's heart race increases as the cat sniffs before rubbing her head on Shinsu's hand, purring. Shinsu's face lights up as butterflies erupt in Izuku's stomach. And Izuku finds himself suddenly in realization of something that changes everything. I think I'm falling in love with Shinso. Izuku sits in his office, looking over the files of a certain student from Gen Ed. A student with a healing quirk. The person who Izuku thinks would be the best candidate for One for All, Amari Tadaban. Their student ID photo shows a teenager with syrup-colored skin dusted with pastel purple freckles. Their hair is pulled into two buns on the sides of their head, the texture similar to cotton candy, with the left side baby pink and the right side baby blue. Light stubble, doing what Izuku calls the PBRY mustache-beard combo. It matches the hair on either side of the face, and looks more scraggly than Aizawa's facial hair. Izuku quickly moves to the quirk to try and understand it more. Sweet healing, their body heals all wounds quickly using stored-up sugars. The speed is so impressive that if there is enough sugar, a broken bone can be healed in 5 minutes. Izuku chuckles at the enthusiasm. There's always been a sort of awesome power that comes with healing quirks. Even if they're solely self-profitable, others are always impressed. It's one of the few times that others get as excited about quirks as Izuku. And this quirk in particular. According to the research Izuku conducted when the student's file was originally sent to him, the Amari family comes from South Africa. There, they have a chain of candy stores, the sweets produced mostly by the most prominent quirk in the family, a candy body quirk. Basically, it makes the body of the user into various candies, including anything their body produces. Their family is one of the main reasons that the question of quirk-produced food and where they stand when it comes to health guidelines was a major thing when quirks were first getting accepted by the world. Long story short, if a person produces food with their body and wishes to sell it, it must be properly labeled and the food sold must be tested by national governments to pass their specific guidelines. For Japan, it's not lax but not strict, just making sure that the food won't harm anyone and can actually provide some nutrients. And the Amari patriarch in Japan has a quirk that matches those guidelines. So, he expanded the family store to Japan after his marriage to, and Izuku had to double-check this himself, Recovery Girl's daughter. The heroine explained to Izuku that her late husband's quirk, a general boost to all of his body's functions, had combined with hers to form a self-healing quirk that took energy from the user, her daughter. The family is small, but it wasn't always. What is now 4 members used to be 9, but after a fire, an incident where a young Taliban had saved their younger siblings and had to be pulled back to stop them from running in to save those who wouldn't make it, most of the elder children passed. A 9-year-old Taliban suddenly became the eldest sibling, and from their record they take their job as an older sibling very seriously. From first aid classes and qualifications to excellent grades and notes from teachers about hard work and kindness, Taliban has shown to be a wonderful role model. And their actions at the incident that pushed them into that position shows a heroic bone that Izuku can only hope hasn't been pushed down in the years since. There is a knock at the office door. Izuku calls for the person to enter and is greeted with a Mari Taliban. They are on the shorter side, but still an inch or so taller than Izuku. Their hair is in the same fashion as it was in the photo. The stubble in the picture was shaved off. They're wearing a simple dress, since school is not in session and they don't need to be in the uniform. Amari? Please, come sit. The student blinks at Izuku, clearly curious as they move to sit down and accept a cup of tea Izuku offers. Now, you may have a few questions, but I would like to explain myself before you ask anything, if that's all right? Taliban nods and Izuku grins before starting off by explaining his status as Nedzu's child, and how that has led to his position at the school. After going over how Izuku is qualified to have his own office and teach, they get to the juicy bit. Now, you're probably wondering why I called you here. What I'm about to say cannot leave this room, do you understand? Yes, sensei. Amari responds, looking at Izuku in the eyes. Good. Now, there is a hero who happens to have a very powerful quirk. A quirk that can be passed down from one user to another. This hero is the 8th holder, and is looking for someone to pass his quirk onto. This quirk is very powerful, and comes with a great responsibility. The mastermind behind the attack on the USJ has been fighting users of the quirk since the beginning of quirks. Being a hero with a powerful quirk like this will rocket one up the ranks quickly, but will also stress them out immensely. But, if you are to accept it, this quirk can be passed on to you. After Izuku's research, he has no DBTS about the person he thinks OFA should be passed to. And his choice is encouraged by the response of, "May I think about this and get back to you?" Izuku gives the student a week to think the offer over before he heads back to the dorms. Truth is, he realized he's maybe developing feelings for Shinso and found the first excuse to leave. So, he told his friend to help Todoroki with anything that the younger teen may want and called the Amari household to talk with Taliban. And now he has to face Shinso once more. Izuku walks into the dorms and finds Shinso and Todoroki on the couch together, Shinsu's favorite BuzzFeed unsolved episode on the TV. That pizza looks American. Shudo says as Ryan explains the Mothman pizza. What does that even mean? Shinso laughs as Izuku walks up. The sound makes Izuku's heart speed up. The green net tries to ignore the thoughts of how wonderful Shinsu's laugh is as he flips himself onto the couch, his head landing in the slightly older teen's lap. Do you want to try candy made form, a popular family in South Africa sometime this week, or do I need to find another minion to help with my bidding? Shinso hums, what type of candy? he asks as his fingers start to comb through Izuku's curls. Well, the type I'm interested in the most is the taffy and cotton candy. The family is the reason for laws about quirk-made foods. Izuku closed his eyes as long, slender fingers tangled themselves into his hair. Well now, this just sounds like the perfect candy store for you. Shinso chuckles as his fingers catch onto a tangle and carefully pull it apart. Quirks? Sweets? What else? Do they sell notepads and pens? They might, Izuku hums, like ones designed after sweets? That would be cute. Izuku's eyes open and a large grin spreads on his face. Do you think they'll have hose notepads that look like something but all just sweets? Shinso chuckles. I'm sure if they don't your dad can find you some. Surprised he hasn't actually. Izuku shrugs and adjusts his body so he can watch the T.V where YouTube is streaming. Do you think that the Mothman might have been an early form of quirks that people hid because they didn't want to get experimented on? Izuku asks after a moment. That's a thing. Shinso asks. Like, people from the 1900s are whatever having a quirk? Well, it's possible that they just didn't activate the DNA that contains all of the quirk stuff. People in the 1900s and early 2000s are almost the exact same as me. And sometimes quirkless people develop quirks if they are exposed to a near-death situation. So, it's possible that someone was in danger, had one of the first quirk activations, and it was a bat moth mutation thing. Todoroki looks at Izuku with a gleam in his eyes that Izuku finds himself excited for. So, if this is the case, it would mean that this person would have been hiding from the US government, correct? Izuku nods. That is right. Todoroki hums and turns back to the screen, but leans forwards more. Izuku finds himself wondering if Todoroki was ever allowed to watch something like this or not. So, when Shinso goes to put on another episode, Izuku doesn't stop him to talk about how the episodes can be used in his training. They just enjoy the show together, Shinso's fingers tangled in Izuku's hair. After a few episodes, Izuku looks over to Todoroki. The boy seems to be relaxed, if still just a little tense. Izuku hums to himself and decides that he should try to figure out what might be causing issues. Todoroki, how is your room? Do you need to buy anything? The boy shifts and hum. I want to change the room so it looks more traditional. The teen admits. He tenses up slightly, but relaxes entirely when Izuku speaks. Well, I think the three of us can remodel a room to look more traditional. It might take a day, but we should be able to do it. Izuku pulls out his phone to look up the materials required for that. Wow. Shinso and Todoroki watch another episode of BuzzFeed Unsolved. After ordering everything needed to remodel Todoroki's room, Izuku finds himself switching between watching the show and watching Shinso. It's definitely a new development. He's trying to understand where the thoughts of falling for Shinso could have come from, if it's even okay, and what he should do. His conclusions? It would be unprofessional for Izuku to even think about Shinso like this. He should repress his feelings and just hope they go away. Even if it wasn't unprofessional, why would Shinso like Izuku like that? Izuku's just the quirkless kid who got fed over and then really lucky. There's so many other people that would be better for Shinso than Izuku. There's always someone better. Izuku has trouble pushing back the memory that tore out his heart not even a week ago. The point is Izuku thinks to himself, I am not good for Shinso. And I should start acting more like a teacher instead of a friend to him. The conclusion hurts. Izuku didn't have friends growing up. Shinso is the first person who Izuku could classify as a friend. But Izuku shouldn't be friends with him. So maybe he should start acting more like a teacher. The first step is stopping the casual affection happening. So, Izuku gets up and tries to imprint the way Shinso's fingers feel as they leave his curls. He shrugs off Shinso's concerns by telling the slightly older teen that papers need to be graded. Izuku makes his way out of the room, pausing once to look at the two students left on the couch. Todoroki coming up with his own wild conclusions, and Shinso's responding laughter. And he tries to ignore the pain in his heart as he walks away from another crush with someone he thinks would be much better for them.